Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, this is a special board meeting of the Board of Trustees, and this is what we're calling a bond workshop, as you're aware. And we did not have closed session this evening, so no announcements for that. And I just need to move on into approving the agenda as it stands. There's no changes to that.
I'd like to move.
I'll second.
All right. First by Trustee Cooper, second by Trustee Aguila. All in favor? 6-0. And one absent. Trustee Millerick is on his way. He comes from San Francisco, so sometimes the traffic is a little hectic. Consent item. We only have one item on consent. Hopefully you guys saw that. So if we don't want to pull it, we can go ahead and move.
I'll move to adopt the consent agenda.
Okay. All right, thank you. First by Trustee Nell, second by Trustee Mack to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? 6-0, one absent. All right, I don't have any non-agenda public comment, but I already have some comment cards for this evening on the bond, Measure G bond program and projects. So if you still have, if you'd like to speak and you haven't filled one out, please do so. Bring it up to Sally here, and we will plug you into where we're going to have public comment. So we'll move along with the presentation first, and then hopefully circle back around. We'll get some clarification questions from the Board of Trustees, and then we'll go into the comment cards. For speakers, you have 3 minutes to speak before the board, and we have a timer right there. I know a lot of you are familiar with this because you're repeat customers of speaking, so, but I want to make sure for those who are new that you have 3 minutes, and once the timer goes off, please wrap up your comments. If you've heard your comment being mentioned and you are good to just pass, just say pass to me and I will move on to the next one. Okay, so let's start off then right away. We'll just jump right into our staff report, which is the Measure G Bond Program Update. The last time we met was on the 28th of August, and we're here back again because the board gave some direction. And I will turn it over to Superintendent Hogaboom to start the evening off. Thank you.
Thank you, President Butler. So welcome to all the trustees. To Millerick, you look sharp tonight. Good to see you. And thanks everybody in the audience for coming out. I'm going to do a quick recap in about 30 seconds. So I think my first year here about 3 years ago, we did a facilities master plan in the district that we hadn't been done in about, I think 10 years or so. And we went to each site and we conducted 2, 3, or 4 meetings with staff and parents and the community to kind of talk about all the things that need to be done at our sites. We tallied all that up. It was about $550 million worth of stuff. Which we knew would not fly, so we went back to the sites and said, hey, this is nice, but we really need you to reprioritize the things that you have on your list. With that, we came up with a list of about 200+ million worth of items and prioritized those and went out for Measure G. The community, thank you very much, passed Measure G with some much needed facilities money that the state, just so everyone is aware, the state provides us with 0 facilities dollars. Let me repeat that. The state provides school districts with 0 money for facilities. We are required to put 3% of our money aside for reserve and deferred maintenance and that kind of stuff, but we do not get money from the state for facilities projects, and that's why we have to go out to the community and ask for money so we can fix up our schools. This, the Measure G was passed, and it has always been a very secondary heavy process and projects. So most of the bulk of the items, I believe about 80 million of the 220 were for the 2 high schools. Then it was the 2 middle schools. And then we really had prioritized Linwood and Olive as the 2 elementary schools that needed the bulk of the money. So that's kind of how things laid out there. All schools were getting some things, but those, the secondary schools and Linwood and Olive were really prioritized as 2 of our oldest schools as needing the most help. So we then we were going to go out and sell the bonds. We sold the first 50 million's worth of bonds about a year ago. And then we needed some help to prioritize. Couldn't get all those 222 million projects done at one time. So we convened a bond implementation committee of about 50 people. We had parents, we had students, we had community members, we had teachers, we had classified staff, we had principals, and those 50 people that represented every school in the district met together to say, okay, what are the most important projects that had to be done? They came up with, I think, a really great list of the criteria that had to do with school safety, had to do with visibility, had to do with projects that were needed as opposed to projects that we wanted, had to do with our district goals. They came up with 4 or 5 lists of criteria, and then they ranked the projects every which way. From that, we came up with about $110 million worth of what we called phase 1 projects that will be done with the first $100 million or so with the bonds, and then the rest were going to be done in phase 2. So that's where we are. Then we also know that we've had a lot of escalation in costs. Is one problem, and the other problem was we probably didn't build into our plans initially enough escalation in costs, so some but not all. So we know now that the $222 million is not going to buy $222 million worth of projects, and there's some projects that we identified that are not going to be able to be done. Some of that is just things have gone up. Some of it's the tariffs on steel and things like that. So we know that we're dealing with less and less money and things are costing more, and because of the fires and a whole bunch of other circumstances I won't go into, our money's not going to go as far as we thought it was going to be. So the board adopted and approved phase 1 projects. And then the community came back and said, well, there were some other projects that we're interested in as well. Air conditioning being one of those, the fields at the secondary schools being another. So those ones have been kind of brought on the table to say, hey, maybe these weren't prioritized initially by the bond implementation committee, but we feel that there's enough reasons why you, the board, should prioritize those now. So that's kind of where we are. And so the staff, we need direction from you all, because if we do have a plan that the ANSI will review about where we are with the phase 1 projects that we're going ahead with. And so if the board's going to add to or change those priorities, then that's the direction we need from you. And if you're going to add some things in there, then we have to take some things off that we're going to be done. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to kind of review where we are with all the numbers on that, get further community input, and then what we're looking for at the end of the night is for you to give us direction, is to say, go ahead with these, or don't go ahead with these, and go from there. So that's kind of where we are in terms of a brief synopsis, which I apologize was definitely longer than 30 seconds. But with that, I will turn it over to Yancey Hawkins to take us through an update.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Hogaboom and trustees. All right, good. So briefly to show where we're going to be going tonight is I'll do a quick overview, and we'll bring up Todd Leaf from our construction management firm to help us out with that around where we are in our phase 1 projects. That's the about $110 million of facilities master plan projects that were approved by the board after being prioritized by the bond implementation committee. We'll go over the financial picture and the cash flow of how we plan on implementing those projects. Then we'll look at the potential of adding any projects. As Superintendent Hogaboom noted, there are some interest in fields at the secondary sites and the air conditioning projects at a few of the elementary sites. And then we'll go over some options of what the board has to do. Overall, in terms of the phase 1 project, I'm going to break it down between district-wide projects and site-specific projects. So for the first 9 projects here around the district-wide project, the initial FMP budget, Facilities Master Plan budget, was about $35 million. Our current projected cost on those projects is just about $42.5 million. So we'll need about $7.5 million additional dollars than we projected in the Facilities Master Plan in order to achieve those projects. In terms of the site-specific projects, as Superintendent Hogaboom noted, this is focused towards the high schools, and the $73 million of projects that was projected in the facilities master plan is projected to be $88.5 million now. It's also important to note that these aren't change in scopes of the project. The Performing Arts Theater was always projected to be a 450-seat performing arts theater. So that is the current, that is the escalation and other related costs that are driving these numbers. So for the site-specific projects, we have an additional $15.5 million that will be required to achieve those projects. And overall, the $108 million of approved project, our current estimate on what those projects are going to cost is $131 million. That's $23.5 million more than the facilities master plan. To putting that into perspective, our entire contingency on the bond program as a whole was approximately 5% of the program, or $10 million. So we're already through the contingency, and we're going to have to look at about $15 million of projects that won't be completed with the $222 million Measure G funds. More specifically, in terms of Phase 1 projects, we have $131 million of approved projects. The available funding through 2021 is about $104 million. So that means of the projects that have already been approved, $27 million of those projects will be completed in 2021 or beyond. And I will turn it over to Todd to go over where those projects are in the development.
Okay, on the slide that you have before you see two buckets. On the bucket of the left, these are fully committed costs. The bond administrative costs are monthly costs for the staff that's running the bond program. The Chromebooks, the San Jose air conditioning, and the deferred maintenance projects are all completed, so just under $13 million in completed projects. In the bucket of the right, these are projects that are in process. The San Marin PA system is currently under contract, so those are committed costs. The Novato PAC, those drawings are currently in design development, just starting construction documents in preparation to go to Division of State Architect for approval before the end of the year. The Novato Center for the Sciences, similarly, is through design development and in the beginnings of construction documents, scheduled to go to Division of State Architect roughly Thanksgiving. The newest one in the list, the Olive Warehouse and M&O at C Street, we're in schematic design phase on that. Hope to bring the schematics back to the board for approval at the October board meeting. Both the San Marin PAC and STEM are in construction documents and scheduled to go to Division of State Architect in November. So cost-wise, we're 7 to 10% into each of those projects at this point. Design-wise, we're approaching 70%, I would say, on average for those projects. So in simplistic form, to date, in completed projects and committed cost, we're just under $80 million. We've got $104 million roughly in bond sales. So if we take the 104 less the 80, there's currently about $24 million in play. Projects that have not started design yet or are just getting started in design. We are in the early stages of schematic design for the district-wide IT infrastructure project. This is primarily cabling, restructuring all of the cabling at all of the sites within the district and improving the bandwidth and connectivity for all of the sites. And that's budgeted currently at $12.9 million. Kind of these all go together, the classroom toolkit and the furniture as well as the connectivity all work synonymously to create your 21st century classroom. Again, the toolkit is through design and is kind of in the purchasing phase, and the furniture similarly. Two projects that we've done some concept designs on and brought some schematics to the board is the second turf fields at the two sites. We do not have schematic design approval on either of those. At this stage, it would be hard pressed to get those in 19. We're probably pushing towards summer of 20 if we were to start those now. The Linwood site renovation, we've got to get the fans off of that site first, which is a project that's in the first group, to kind of do our space planning for the pickup and drop off and working on that. So in all likelihood, if we started that project today, that would be a summer of 2020 start. Similar to the Sinaloa Gym would be a 2020 start. And finally, deferred maintenance. This primarily at this stage is roofs. We have some roofs identified at Novato High and also at San Marin High that are beginning to be problematic, and so the $3.13 million would likely be a summer of 19 or summer of 20 project to avoid damage. So if you look at the total on that, we're at about $48.6 million with about $24 million in funds available.
I just wanted, Todd, if you could note on the projects in development right now, you noted that we are 7 to 10% in development costs. Could you tell us what would be the impact in time and dollars if we were to change the scope of those buildings?
So the four major projects, the STEM centers and the PACs, to substantially cut the budgets on those, we would have to go through a major redesign process. The buildings have been structured, the engineering's done. You're not going to just lop off a couple $1 million of the building with the current plans. So schedule-wise, we would probably lose 6 months on the overall schedule to go back and go through the redesign process. Escalation-wise, we would use a year because all of these projects are set up to do a summer start. So the noisy, heavy work of demolition and
And so when we design any learning experiences, but also professional development for our staff, this is our North Star. We want to make sure that when our students go into a classroom, that the environment, but also the experience that they have, model the skills that both our community and our college representatives have said our students need to be able to do when they leave our schools. Collaboration, communication, critical thinking, conscientious learner, cultural competence, and character. So the first on this list is classroom furniture. We know how important it is to be able to have a flexible, collaborative, and a learning environment in which we are able to mirror what students are getting prepared for in life. Right now, we have original classroom furniture. If you're one of the schools who is fortunate enough to have a PTA who has raised money, and thank you again to the communities who have been able to do that, we do have some classrooms who have some flexible furniture. But on a larger scale, the majority of our classrooms not only have original furniture, but when we have new classes come together or new teachers are hired, often we're scraping together what we have in storage units or the last bits of pieces in the backs of classrooms to get together enough seats just so students have some place to be in a desk that either fits the size of their, the size that they need, but also the classroom. And so just classroom furniture in general is a struggle. Also, they're very inflexible. Our classrooms and our furniture were designed for direct instruction. That's not the instructional model that we are looking for, and it's not what we're developing in our classrooms and in our professional development. And what we really need to be in alignment with our priority, again, the equitable learning environment. So all of our students in every one of our schools should have the opportunity to be in a learning environment that is both innovative and collaborative. We need furniture that mirrors that. And again, we need a learning environment that mirrors their expectations moving forward. We've talked about this a little bit before, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the next slide, but that's the technology integration. We're in phase 1 of what we need to be doing with technology, and our classrooms at this moment in time don't allow for our students to use the tools that we've put in their hands in the most effective way. Here you can see, just to compare contrast, the two pictures on your far left are our model classrooms. This has flexible classroom environment. This has technology integration. It has upgrades for teacher and student-centered learning. On the other side is what we currently have. They call them the one-armed bandits. All of us grew up in those exact same chairs. Anyone who went to school here certainly sat in one of those desks. You know them well. All right. So classroom furniture, just to note, that budget of 30, I believe it's $3,500,000, that's actually only going to cover 1/3 of the classrooms as it is. We have far more than 1/3 of our classrooms in need of new classroom furniture. So that in itself is a tiny little budget to cover the need. But it is a step forward. The teacher toolkit, on the other hand, is the other $3.5 million, and that is to get technology into the classrooms and into the hands of teachers so that we can do what is supposed to be happening with the devices we've given students. At this point, we've rolled out 5,000 Chromebooks to students. We have another 6,000 devices in the hands of our students in the form of rolling Chromebook carts, iPads, laptops, you name it. That's 11,000 devices on our internet every day. We absolutely do not have the infrastructure for them to be able to connect the way they need to. We've created the digital scope and sequence. We have not started rolling that out yet, large in part because our teachers don't have the tools they need in the classroom to be able to make those useful. We have outdated and cobbled together classroom equipment and tools. You go into a classroom, you're going to trip over cords, you're going to trip over wires, you're going to have teachers' stations set up in a place that is not the least bit effective, but there because it's the only place in the room that has plugs or internet connections. And then last again, the infrastructure. Our students can't get on the internet at the speed that they can. In addition, those of you who are teachers in the room, when you go to do a lesson and the internet's down or the internet is slow, you have to change gears, and you have to change gears quickly. So we need to make sure that we're ready to prepare students for the world they're going into. And then I'm going to hand it over to my friend Tim here, who's going to talk more about the infrastructure itself.
As I transition into talking about the infrastructure, I just want to take a second while we're still talking about the teacher toolkit to remind you of what we talked about the last time Jen and I had the opportunity to come here and talk to you guys. And we have a vision for how we want to use technology in the classroom, and I just want to reiterate that the idea was behind the idea that we're going to use modern tools. It was predicated around the idea of using video and recording direct instruction when it's really good and being able to share it. Being able to screencast, being able to take a screen off of the teacher's computer and share it with student desktops, or have students be able to share with the entire class. Those are all things that require quite a bit of infrastructure and the capacity to be able to do that. Our current infrastructure, there's a lot of details that I could get into, and I'd be happy to share those with Trustee Millerick because I know that's in his bailiwick. But I wanted to come up with two good examples that everybody can relate to. First of all, the infrastructure that we have in place in many of our schools right now is crumbling. If you take a look at some of the conduit, it's not sexy, it's up on top of the building, nobody sees it. But there's conduit up there that was placed there to begin with that was out of specification, things that were meant for indoors that are up on the ceiling, exposed to the elements, and that are crumbling. Right now, if one of those internet connections goes down, we're on the hook for $5,000 every time we got to fix one of those and replace it. Okay? The other Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. Additionally, the other example that I wanted to share with you that I think really demonstrates where we're at right now is that the California State Department of Education is recommending that you have a gigabit per second of internet connectivity for every 1,000 kids that you have in the district. At the moment, we're running 2. That means that we need 8, right? So, the needs are for reliable and robust mobile connectivity. These days, everything is mobile. We're also, it's important to consider the security needs that we have going on these days. We need more cameras, and we need the ability to record what's going on in the schools. And infrastructure that can grow. It's important to realize that we're just at the beginning of this right now. We're handing out Chromebooks to students, and we're just getting used to figuring out how we're using technology. I talked about the video stuff before. If we get to a point where we're using the video, the need for that capacity is going to grow exponentially. And to show you that I'm being straight, these are the pictures of what the conduit looks like on top of some of these buildings. And I think we used more than our 4 minutes, so thank you for your time.
Michelle will talk about the second turf multi-sport field.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate you taking the time to kind of give us this forum and just share our needs as a community, and I think that's really valuable. I have 2 requests for you tonight. The first is to ask that you keep our secondary turf field in the Phase 1 plan as the community formally established as a priority and continues to prioritize. Because as it currently stands, it is unusable. So its existence in any capacity is reliant on it moving forward, because right now it is non-existent. However, the board should also commit to a plan and a firm timeline to address the unplayable conditions of our baseball and softball fields. And I urge you to, when you do make a decision, to look at these facilities as a whole, as a 3-unit whole, and what they're going to look like at the end of this process, as opposed to just throwing good money after bad and slapping a Band-Aid on our fields and calling it done. I really appreciate the district and Mike and Yancey and Jim for including baseball and softball in our 10-year plan. But as they stand, the fields are unplayable now. So I certainly do not envy your position. You've got many difficult decisions to make, but the decisions do need to be made now, because every day that we delay these projects, as Yancey and Mike have pointed out, we're just increasing our construction costs. So, so I thank you for your attention, quick attention to the matter. Thank you.
All right, so we've gone through where we are in the projects. We've gone through where we need to get to and the current plan to do that. And so the options as we look forward, there's a few options. So the first is a status quo option, so no changes, no insert of any new projects, and it's to follow our current Phase 1 project list as noted on this slide, right here on slide 11. So that's fund additional projects at Loma Verde and Olive. Those projects are about $1.5 million each. And then the Linwood air conditioning project would be included in the major modernization scheduled for 2021. And so Todd, if I can note why from a financial standpoint, that would be.
So as always, it's more economical if you're doing a modernization to be all-encompassing with the HVAC system as well. Economies of scale on your general conditions, and especially at a school the age of Linwood, the electrical system's not likely capable of supporting the air conditioning. And to do that electrical work in 2 separate phases, you're just increasing your costs. So for schedule-wise and economy of scale-wise, if you can treat that as a single modernization, it's going to save you money.
One thing I just wanted to reiterate, the reason that we are looking at these 3 schools and not potentially every school in the district is that Loma Verde, Olive, Linwood, and San Jose all fit into a band of schools that were our warmest schools And so on very hot days, the classroom temperatures were highest at those schools. The San Jose project was in phase 1, so that has just been implemented this summer, and that leaves the 3 potential projects for that. So 2 potentially, as we noted in the slide, that we'd already had the projects moved to 2021. Really, the projects that we could move are the furniture, toolkit, and IT infrastructure upgrades, or we could delay the second turf field, and that's about $3 million as well. So you could do a phasing, and so we could do all of the high schools, middle schools, and maybe a couple elementary schools of the furniture, classroom toolkit, and infrastructure, and then the remaining sites would be done in 2021. The next option is if you looked at doing all of those, you have the somewhat inefficient nature of adding the Linwood AC project outside of its major modernization currently scheduled for 2021. So the additional cost would be about $4.4 million. And at that point, you can't simply move. If you wanted to look at the second turf field at Novato High School, that's not going to get you all the way there. So at some point, you're going to have to look at least some phasing of the furniture, toolkit, and IT infrastructure upgrades. So how that might look is the high schools and middle schools would be completed in 1920, and the elementary schools would be completed in 2021 or 2022. So the other option is option 4, and this looks at the fields at both high schools. And so this would be anywhere from $1.8 million to $9.7 million. I've added this from the slide to note that the smallest of those projects is the softball field at either site, and then to doing all of the projects would be $9.7 million at those sites. So the potential funding sources for those would be phasing in of the infrastructure, toolkit, and furniture, and at that point you're looking at a pretty major phasing in, and this isn't something I would necessarily recommend, but if you went back and you were to say what projects of the ones in development was the lowest on the list for the bond implementation committee, it was the San Marin High School Performing Arts Center, and that's somewhere around the cost as well. So not necessarily our recommendation, but that would be, if you wanted to look at that list, that would be a way. So the board had asked at the last meeting also to bring back some improved safety and maintenance plans. No matter what the board decides on field renovations, none of those would be completed for the 2018-19 season. So the board asked what could be completed before the 2018-19 season to make the field safe and playable. The first is to contract with a landscape contractor for the infield, which is obviously a large concern for safety. And so the district actually had already done that, had gone with Hummingbird, which is a local contractor that works on fields throughout Marin. The second is to contract with a landscape contractor for the outfield. And so this would supplement the work that our folks would do and get into a contract for that. The third item would be to contract with a pest control contractor for gopher control. Superintendent Hogaboom wanted me to play the Kenny Loggins "I'm All Right" from Caddyshack, but we want to get rid of them, and so we didn't do that. But this would be a significant contract that would look at the softball, the second turf field in between, and the baseball field, and it would be almost daily eradication with a upfront eradication as well. And then the fourth is upgrades to the field's irrigation system. I'm sure that many of the parents and coaches could tell you that the irrigation model right now leaves much to be improved upon. And so we could do that. The cost of this is somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000 for this season for 2018-19. And that would be my recommendation no matter what, because no matter whether we add the field or not, it can't be completed before the 2018-19 season. I won't go into this as much because it's somewhat dependent upon the decisions that the board makes tonight, but there are additional potential repairs and maintenance that could be put in place, but would take longer than would be available for the 2018-19 season. That would include potentially grass replacement, seed or sod, soil treatment to treat the infield for not only water, but for the critters, putting in soil that they may not like so much, doing a major overhaul of the irrigation systems, and doing significant infield repairs. Those projects could run the gambit from, say, $50,000 to $1 million, but as I said, I won't spend too much time on that because it depends on the conversations that we'll have. This slide was not in your original, but a board member had asked. It's from the presentation on the 28th of August that we had, and it's to put into perspective where we are as the program as a whole. So as we noted earlier in the presentation, we're at about $131 million in approved, board-approved projects that we're moving towards. Phase 2, which lists all the projects here, is another $107 million. So we're at $238 million in projects from the facilities master plan only as of right now. As everyone knows, Measure G is $222 million. So we are already over that amount by $16.5 million. And that $16.5 million does not take into consideration that the $107 million projected in phase 2 is from the facilities master plan, which we've seen significant escalations even from that. So if you just took into consideration even, and I think this is a conservative estimate, just add the current escalation on the projects from phase 1, we're looking at $35 million over additional funding that would be needed to complete all the projects in the facilities master plan. And so already, without adding any additional projects, we're going to have to cut out $16 to $35 million as is. So with that, not cut out, but delay those projects till additional funding sources can be found. So with that, I'm happy to open it up and,
Yeah, I think we'll bring it back to the board. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I appreciate all Jen and Todd and Tim coming forward and Michelle providing the background to some of these things. That's really helpful. So, okay, board members, I want to bring it back to us and any I do have, a little stack of blue cards, so we need to go through those. But I want to get any clarifying questions. Trustee Aguila and then Trustee Matt.
Yes, hi. Thank you for this hard work. It's very clear. I have a few questions, though, regarding one of the slides, page 12.
They're numbered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful.
Yes. So I'm a little bit confused because how is the tennis courts and the turf fields for Novato High, how is it that you combine them to do 5?
So as in June, Mike and his team, I believe I was away for that meeting, but brought a 10-year plan of different options of what to do, specifically with the fields at Novato High School. And they included different options, which were included from just putting in the second turf field to turfing the baseball and softball fields in place where they were. Also moving the softball field up onto a level with the baseball and second turf field. As well as, and specifically to answer your question, the tennis courts as of right now are the location for the Performing Arts Center. And so three of those courts, thank you, Jeff, are gonna have to move already. And so they're going to be, as of right now, broken up into 3 and 2. And so this would, one of the options, and I believe the preferred option of the site would be to move to have all of the tennis courts together and able to have competitions, because as of now, I believe that the MCAL or the NCS, yeah, and for ADA access. Thank you, Mike. But there are about, what was it, 4 options? Thank you. So there were 5 options, ranging in cost from no additional costs, so only including the second turf field, all the way up to a cost of almost additional $8 million. So what this includes is option 3B from our June presentation, and I think we also brought it back at the August presentation, but it includes the 85,000 square foot synthetic turf practice field, 30,000 square foot of lighted tennis courts, 15,000 foot donated JORTC marching pavilion, a 31,000 square foot relocated synthetic turf softball field up to the level of the baseball field and second turf field, as well as 102,000 square foot synthetic turf baseball field. So that's where the $5.7 million comes from and why it includes the tennis courts.
Right, but if we have it lined up differently, separate the Novato High School turf with the tennis, I mean, that changes the numbers, right? So it'd be 25 million. It would change the numbers if
Yeah.
we just list them separately, so we can get a better idea, because that's a little bit confusing to me.
So those were included as a total. If you wanted to move towards option, I think we can get you the additional data.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing, it may be a silly question, but it's important to me, because I care about 3 populations, and that would be the ones that can't defend themselves, which is the seniors and children and animals. And so the gophers, I understand they need to go, I get it. But can we find the way to be humane, and maybe partner with somebody that would get rid of them in a nice way?
Yeah, we the way that we've done it is in the most humane way that we possibly can find.
Which is?
It uses CO2, which has them fall asleep and they don't wake up. So, but the other ways are traps, which would kill them. There is filling the holes, which would suffocate them, or there is using gas and lighting it on fire.
We're not doing gas, right?
No.
Okay. Okay, and we can't collect them somehow and give them to, like...
It's...
No, I mean,
It's-
like to do studies, like to, for...
It
studies.
just has not been found to be effective in removing them.
Because somehow I thought that if we were to just build on top, they would come up, they couldn't, and they can't chew through turf, or can they?
It would be very difficult for them to come through the mesh that would
Okay.
be included.
So then wouldn't they just automatically,
They would move to another portion of the campus.
right,
They won't leave.
if we do the gas, or not, either way, they'll go.
If they're no longer there, they won't go anywhere. So, if you use the gas, no, they will not go anywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Mack.
And I think that's a good point. Gophers are a continuing problem, not just these sites. They're a continuing problem at almost every single one of our sites, as well as I live in Terra Linda, and I work with their folks, and it's an ongoing problem with all of them as well. It just depends on how much money you're willing to spend on that.
All right, I wasn't gonna talk about gophers yet, but you brought it up, so I'll go ahead and start. So I have a bit of a series of questions.
Yeah.
With regard to gophers, we talked about this, but I just want to share it, and maybe you can
Yep.
talk about it. The concept of potentially changing the composition of the soil so they no longer want to be there by adding lime into the soil, and it's a very natural way of just making it gopher-proof. Is that accurate?
I'm never going to say go for proof, but treating the soil can do two things. Number one, for moisture, which is obviously a problem on those fields, but also with rodents, you can change the acidity in the soil and make it very uncomfortable for them and have them not want to come. So I believe that that's been fairly effective. And Todd? We haven't had any issues. So. As
So that
gopher
could be a
proof as
solution.
I can say without saying gopher proof.
No, I understand. But so if we had grass, there is an option for us to effectively, not permanently, but effectively finally manage that, the rodent population.
Yes.
Then, which brings me to my kind of natural next point. The way I see this is a classroom, and this is no different than having rats in a classroom. We have to fix it. Unacceptable, period. I don't do anything unless we fix this problem. That's my number one priority. And however we do it, we'll do it. But we need to get rid of the rodents in our classroom. And also, too, just to be clear, I know you asked about turf. There's nothing for them. They have no interest in turf because they eat grass. They don't eat plastic. So if there's turf, they just go away. They go somewhere else. But anyway, enough about that. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. If we can go to slide 3, my original question. And this is more me just clarifying and making sure we understand how we got here. I think this is a really good slide because of the 2 columns it has. It shows where we were and where we are, and that's 7 million. When you look at it, you can really see the 2 major drivers there are really one that wasn't there to begin with, number 7, $5.7 million for the fans move. That's a big hit. And then the other piece is the infrastructure upgrades went up by, 1.7. So the 2 of those added up together, there's your 7 million. And I think it's just important for us to understand how we got here. So let's just remember that the Linwood ES fans move was not in there, and we added it. And I voted yes on that, so I'm just saying, it's part of it. Let's go to slide 4, more of the same. So generally speaking, the big hits here, right, are gonna be in the PACs, right? Roughly 7 million, 6 point something for Novato. And then the San Marin, it was just exploded, another 6. And in terms of percentage, it's astronomical. And then there's some other changes, and also in the STEM centers as well. But the 2 big ones are the STEM. And I just wanted to point how we got to where we are right now. And one thing that caught my attention in your presentation, I completely forgot about this. The San Marin PAC was not in phase 1. Just design was in phase 1. And now we're paying for the full thing in phase 1. So that's something to think about. I'm not saying what we should do, but that's something to think about. Then the other point I want to make is, hold on, I'm looking for my notes. Apologize. And then the other point that you mentioned too that made me think, is it feasible for us to do grass for the second practice fields? But once again, gopher proof, make them work. Maybe they're not, maybe they still have rain issues, but at least they're usable. Right now they're not usable. So could we effectively, instead of turfing the second practice field, for instance, at Novato, fix it, flatten it, get rid of the gopher holes and make it gopher proof, and then save probably, I'm gonna guess, $2 million.
So I think with that, the issue around using grass, and it might be the right reason for a lot of things, is a ton of the cost for those fields is leveling them at first. So it's the infrastructure, it's doing the ADA accessibility to ensuring that we've got level all the way from classrooms from all points in the campus. It's also the infrastructure of the earthwork, the concrete work all around it, the fencing, and all of that. What you're gonna get is the difference between the cost of, because we're gonna have to do all the same things up until we drop the pad and the turf over top of it, and then we add the infill, or that we add the or we add the grass. And I think at that point, if we're going to be doing the infrastructure work to create those, and Todd probably could answer this better than I could, the savings would not likely be significant as the operating savings that you would get from having a turf field that's also playable, 365 days a year instead of 100 and something. But Todd, do you have?
As Yancey said, kind of the difference between the cost of the carpet and the cost of the sod. If you're doing a sod field, you're doing a slit sand drainage, you're having to do irrigation, you're having to do soils work. You have to amend the soils to make them, the turf take and survive well, as opposed to lime treat, the pad, and the turf. The general delta is between $2 and $3 a square foot. So if you take a baseball field, which is roughly 100,000 feet, you're talking between $250,000 and $300,000 in savings.
Okay, so I get that, and I understand that difference between rug and sod, right, is, it's there, but it's not massive. My point is, though, instead of building out a whole new infrastructure of a practice field at Novato High, why not just effectively smooth out what's there, get it properly seeded and sodded, and make it gopher-proof, or however you can, eradicate the gophers. And then we have a solution. Now, granted, I know it's going to get rained on. That's going to be an issue, but it saves a lot of money.
I think you've got a couple things. First, your topography. You've got a 4-foot slope across that field that really needs to be corrected. It's difficult to play soccer on a pitch like that. Second, your drainage is either buried, crushed, or infilled, and needs to be reestablished. So investing money into especially natural grass without reestablishing a drainage would be kind of throwing good money after bad. You need drainage with the turf as well, but with the natural grass, if you don't get the water off the field, it becomes a mud pit. And third, your irrigation is virtually non-existent. So again, with all of these fields, the key to them, whether it's the baseball, the softball, or the practice field that's there, you've got to get it back to grade. To get it back to grade, you've got to take the surface off, which means you're going to get into the irrigation and the drainage. You've got to reestablish the irrigation and the drainage as your foundation before whether you put turf or grass on top of it. Without the irrigation and the drainage repaired, it's just not going to last.
Okay. Last question, I promise. AC. I've been approached by a number of contractors who have told me that we need to take a longer, harder look at the possibility of phasing AC in terms, especially with regard to the fact that each classroom has its own individual unit, just like San Jose. So why not instead, and this, I'm basically conveying the message I'm hearing, why not instead look at the hot spots on the campus and AC them first, and then work our way into the cooler spots of the campus, because there are hot spots on each campus. Is that something that's been considered?
We haven't looked at that significantly. We did look at it a little bit. San Jose has a very distinct pattern on that, so we looked a little bit at that. But the savings versus coming out there at some point in the future, so you have to pay for them to come out again. You have to pay for them to have their trailers and all their general conditions costs. And so it really just, it didn't pencil out to look at that. And then you look at equity on a single campus. So we didn't look at that for the other projects. But Todd can, note what the additional costs and savings could be.
Of the cost, a substantial part of it is redoing the electrical system to power the condensing units. And again, if you're running feeders around the campus, economies of scale, it's much easier to run a loop around the campus, drop off all the feeders at all the classrooms to provide the power for the condensing units, similar to what we did at San Jose. And as Yancey said, you're going to pay for the contractors to be out there for 9 weeks regardless if they're doing 10 air conditioners or doing 34 air conditioners. So your dollar stretches the farthest to do it all at once for both the electrical and the HVAC system. And certainly trying to decide which teachers get the air-conditioned rooms would be a challenge.
Sure. Like I said, I've heard other people tell me this, and I thought it was important to bring it up so it can be clearly addressed. Just trying to find ways to sharpen the pencil. That's it for me for now.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Mack. Trustee Cooper, and then Trustee
So,
Nell.
My concern or question right now is revolves around the air conditioning. Could you refresh my memory or our memories about the, on slide 14 and 15, you talk about air conditioning. And on slide 14, you just have 2 schools, and then you have 3 on slide 15. Can you talk about a little bit about the heat at each one of those schools? And I think was your last presentation.
Absolutely.
Just kind of refresh our memories about
So,
which was hottest, which was not as hot.
so we did a look at our 2 schools and all of our schools, and we did an analysis of all of our classrooms. So all of our schools that were built later, and so that's Hamilton in the south, and a lot of our schools in the north were built with air conditioning when it was more normal to build schools with air conditioning. Of the schools, the other schools, we kind of put them into 2 different, after we did an analysis, we looked at average temperatures on over a week, a warm week, and said, where are the average temperatures in the classrooms? And then they really fell within a couple standard deviations of each other. And so we really broke that into 2 different groupers. So our hotter classrooms and our cooler classrooms. And they pretty much met up with the facilities master planning process that went. So our warmer schools were San Jose, Olive, Linwood, and Loma Verde. And our cooler schools were Hill, Lou Sutton, Novato High, and Rancho. And so they were at least a 2 standard deviation, or at least 1.5 standard deviation from the other group when we looked at that. And so that's why that we focused on those 3 schools, the 4 minus San Jose that we've already done.
And how would you characterize the difference between those 3 on that screen right there? Loma Verde, Olive, and Linwood.
They are similar.
Very similar.
They're similar in the ranges that they get. As Trustee Mack noted, there's some classrooms that are warmer than others, and it depends also on the day of how the heat's coming. You knew that if you were right along Ignacio Boulevard at San Jose, it was going to be really hot, and if you were in the back, it was just going to be pretty hot. But same thing for all of our campus. They have their own kind of sun. And also, a lot of the work that we did to make our schools more energy efficient in some of the last projects make them in warm weather. So, dropping the ceilings, taking out louvers, things like that, made them tougher to cool in warm temperatures.
Yep. And then one more question, and that was regarding Novato High School, the PAC. Are there any savings to be realized eliminating the gallery or the pit? We had talked about those 2 at one point, and I don't think those savings are there anymore.
No, so we're still doing everything we can, but it's to be clear, we're having trouble getting it to that $25 million budget. We've had several meetings in the last couple of weeks, making it very unlikely that the additional spaces that we really wanted programmatically can be included at that $25 million price tag. A big increase that we've seen on that specifically is the price of steel. And we've seen I think our estimate was $2 million on steel costs, and our estimate on the design drawings we saw was $3.5 million. So just to cite are some of the projects that need the most steel, and a lot of our other projects, if just for cost first, we'll probably go away from steel or have it only be a small part.
Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Nell.
So the cost of the Novato High School PAC continues to escalate, and we continue to have to reduce the scope of the project, is what I'm hearing for the first time, that in order to get to 25 million, you've already eliminated the gallery and the orchestra pit.
So we haven't done anything as of right now. What we got was, we got an original, so to back up just a second, the board approved a schematic design budget of $25 million. Our budget at the time, I believe, was 27 million on the 27 million dollars. But that was without a lot of the very important details, especially on a performing arts center that can change different ways. We were hoping for some savings in that. Those haven't necessarily appeared. But the board approved that budget with the knowledge of we were going to go forward and attempt to get the gallery space and the orchestra pit in there. But understanding that that might not be possible. So we're still looking at every option. We're not, we're looking at where you entrance, the building, a lot of different options. So I'm not going to say as of right now that those are completely off the table, but I'm saying that we are having trouble getting down to the $25 million budget, and we're looking at anything that we can, and hopefully not to impact the program. So we're going back to those program documents that Shalek and Associates did to really focus on what are the key needs of the project, and focusing on how to move forward and hitting that $25 million budget, because we know that, this board doesn't want to be coming back and saying, okay, now we got to push back another project in order to do that. So.
Well, I just want to go back a little bit and say that at the beginning of the presentation, there was a discussion about escalation and replanning costs. So it seems like escalation is a factor if we were to decide not to do the PAC on the current schedule. But as far as the designing aspect, we really haven't gotten that far along. If you're not willing to say that you can guarantee to bring this thing in at 25 million with such large variables like the orchestra pit and the gallery area. So this is new information to me, and I guess I'm getting two messages. So you're going to try to do it. So why would not an option be for us to help you get there by simply stating, let's lower the scope of the high school, the Novato High School PAC to help you get there? Why aren't we discussing that as an option?
So we're working within the $25 million budget of that, and we are focusing on the program and completing as much of the program as possible. We noted that those two options were only going to move forward if we had the budget to do so. So we're taking those two items as we would like to get them in the project, but we're only going to put them in the project if it's over 21 million. The major reason why we're actually farther in that process is the gallery space is in front of the main structure of the building, and the orchestra pit is basically just a dug down portion of the building. Those two things to move out of the design is not significant. And we also, our architects knew that those might be they were likely something that could come out of those projects. So they've designed it in which a way that coming out of it won't significantly change. If there were other significant change to scopes, like changing it from a 450-seat theater to a 350-seat theater, the whole dynamics of the building would change, and we'd have to go back to before schematic design to do that.
So essentially, you're saying there's some differentiation to the limits in our planning of this particular project, that because initially I felt like you were trying to say that our hands were tied, we've moved too far, and that $25 million was what we had to commit to on this project. But what I'm hearing now is something quite different. I'm hearing that we are in a position to change the scope of that project, and I understand that the changes that we were to suggest to the scope of that project at some point become diminishing returns when you start to add in the fact that the additional planning and the escalation and time required. So I simply want to just be clear that you're trying to get what's been proposed built for $25 million, but you're hedging by saying that you might have to pull them out if things continue to get expensive or tennis courts cost more to move the tennis courts or whatever other contingencies we might have. It sounds to me like you're asking for a little bit of a hedge in the ability to reduce the scope of that project in order to come in under 25 million. Now, is that a fair characterization?
I think the only flexibility that I believe that we are using is what was identified by the board at schematic design when we said the budget is $25 million. As of right now, we believe that it's going to cost more than that, and that likely the gallery and the orchestra pit would be the things that would have to be removed. Other than that, I am not saying any other change to the scope. And this value engineering work that we're doing around the project is typical with all of our projects, that we go in and we look at the finishes, we go in and look at not major scope of things. The only two things of significance are the two that we laid out at schematic design.
Okay. I think we're basically saying the same
Okay.
thing. So, just this is clarification, right? So I want to look at option 1, and I just want to assign some numbers. Option 1 is status quo, no changes, but actually option 1 has an enormous amount of changes to the status quo. You're suggesting that we that we remove these exceptions to option 1 in order to pay for it. Is that a
So
characterization?
this-
I mean, explain 1, 2, and 3, 4. As I understand it, we follow the current phase of phase 1 project list with exceptions, and then you list 4 exceptions below that.
And so the status quo of that is those were the projects that we were currently scheduling for 2021.
So in order to get to the $104 billion
Yes.
price, option 1 actually is not the status quo. It is, in fact, pulling 4 projects.
Is scheduling them for 2021. But I guess, yeah, we're saying
Well,
the same thing.
it's not status quo. It's option 1, and in order to do option 1, you are suggesting these 4 projects. Now, when I look at the 4 projects that are listed here, I'm using page 8 to identify the dollar amounts that I can assign, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page. The Linwood renovation project scheduled for 2021 is $10 million.
Yes.
We're in agreement on that?
Yes.
Exception number 2, which we would pull from the current plan, is the Sinaloa Gym project. On page 8, that's $10 million.
Yes.
Option 3 is unplanned deferred maintenance schedule for 21 through 27. I'm a little hazy on this one, but I believe it's still on page 8, and that's about 2.7 million, or is
That's
that
3.1.
3.1? Okay, 3.1. And that is on page 8.
Yes.
Because there's some deferred maintenance mentioned throughout the report, and I just want
Yes.
to make sure this is the dollar amount we're discussing.
Those are the projects that weren't scheduled until 2021 or beyond.
All right, option 4 is the second turf field project, and that's also on page 8, and that's listed at 2.7.
Yes.
Then you go on to list an additional item that breaks out the second turf field at Novato High, and I guess that's just in there. For some reason, you didn't feel it was necessary to say that it included classroom technology, that it included 21st century flexible furniture. I'm just wondering, what is the reason for this cloud bullet on this page?
Because of the work that we did around the 10-year plan, we got some feedback that we wanted to ensure that people knew that the Novato High School second turf field, because we were talking about adding fields later in the report, that we noted that status quo included the second turf field it was to avoid some confusion. It wasn't to highlight it over any of the other projects.
Well, for my purposes, I would prefer to not think of this as status quo. This is
Okay.
option 1, so I assume that everything in the current plan of phase 1, which is in fact the high school field. But what I'm getting at is unless you're gonna list everything that's in it and the 4 things you're gonna take out of it, I don't see the need to be listing this particular option independently when you have 14 or 15 other options that you didn't list on this particular.
So I guess the reason we noted it as status quo is that it matched up with the last facilities update that the facilities department gave in terms of timing.
Okay.
So we were saying it matches up with that.
Well,
And then the other options would be a change on the timing of the projects from that. But
so let's,
I understand.
so I understand what you did. I just don't see a need for it.
Okay.
Displayed in this fashion, there's a few other things. I just would prefer something more mathematical, linear
Yep.
in nature. The term status quo, this is an option that we are supposed to be considering that exempts these 4 projects.
And so one thing,
Yeah.
Trustee Mack had actually provided a schedule that's a little bit more
And
mathematical.
I was thinking, would it make sense just to pull that up now and walk through the options really quick? And it might make sense before the blue
Madam
sheet.
President, if
people.
I, if I could just finish my questioning?
Yeah, sorry.
Because this is a clarification part of the
Right.
meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and while we're at it, on page 13, and we're discussing this cloud call-out that you have on here, we can assign a $2.7 million figure that I got that off of page 4, but I assume it's probably on page 8 too.
It's on both pages, yes, you're
Okay.
right.
So then, just for clarification, I want to try to understand when I move on to option 2 and option 3, there are insertions, these are actual options. This is where we're proposing to insert new projects. And then I believe what you're doing is you're going on to explain how you're recommending we pay for them, and you're putting forward 3 options on 3 exceptions, because they were called exceptions on option 1, so I guess we'll call them exceptions on option 2. And you have a 4th, which is, again, called out specifically. For some reason, you seem to be identifying the Novato High School second turf field as some unique item that we should be considering separately. But let me ask you the question. When I look at option 1, we covered those exceptions, but all of a sudden, when we get into coming up trading dollars for dollars in option 2, we've brought up 3 new sources or possible cuts and re-identified the turf field. And I'm just wondering, is that because you're giving us 3 to 4 options that are in a similar dollar amount? Or is there some sort of priority associated with your exceptions on option 1? Because if I was going to go to option 2, why wouldn't I just start with your exceptions on page 13, which are the ones we've talked about and identified their dollar amounts? So if we just knocked off the Linwood renovation project, the first exception on option 1, well, hell, we'd have the option 2 taken care of easily, right?
So I apologize. Option 2 assumes that we've moved ahead with the projects that are scheduled to be performed in option 1. So if-
you're saying, okay, well, so you're saying option 2 assumes we made these exceptions on option 1.
So option 2 assumes that we've moved forward with the schedules as noted in option 1. So we need an additional $3 million to do those
Right,
projects.
so if we move on to option 2, you're saying we've already pulled the Linwood renovation, we've pulled or rescheduled the Linwood renovation, the Sinaloa gym, the unplanned deferred maintenance, and the second turf field, and then we can begin to consider option 2.
Yes.
Okay. So these exceptions are the first round of exceptions. I think it's not that clear. They're scheduled for 2021 now. So are you saying that we're going to reschedule these 4 options, or are there possible items that we can cut entirely from the project?
No, those are currently scheduled. So we have the $104 million that we have to spend until 2021. We have $131 million of approved phase 1 projects. So $27 million of those projects have to be performed in 2021. And those projects are the Linwood renovation, the Sinaloa gym, the unplanned deferred maintenance, and the second turf field at San Marin High School. Those are planned. That puts us at $104 million by 2021.
All right, so now if we want to add anything,
Yep.
you've suggested these 4 items for option 2, which I believe you call it. And then also option 3, which I believe is just an additional school for air conditioning, and then we're using the top 3 replacement projects.
And those are phasing in as they, it's not eliminating completely or anything like that. It's a phasing in instead of doing.
Yeah, I
Is that?
So
am I-
phasing in this could mean that for these projects, we do all of the furniture, classroom toolkit, and infrastructure at the high schools and the middle schools, and we wait until 2021 to do the elementary schools. So that's what I mean by phasing in the projects.
okay, so they're, you're basically just delaying the payments on the second half or third or whatever in order to get the AC into the first phase.
Yes, before 2020. If we want to do AC before 2021, we have to do something else after 2021.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I just wanted to get some clarification on,
Those are good,
how you were
Trustee Nell.
presenting
Thank
the
you.
information.
I think that you, Trustee Miller, and then I want to, we have some administrators here and some principals here, and I would, if they would like to come up and speak, I would like to do that. So, just because of timing purposes. And then I want to make sure I get back to Ross, Maria, and then Shelley.
Let me
But just know where I'm going.
minimize my
That's all.
questions now, so I'll ask some more later. So the first concern that I have, and thank you whoever asked for the last page, page 19. There's phase 1 and phase 2 items in this conversation. And the community conversation we had when we walked door to door and knocked on and talked to people, we talked about all of these bond measures. And I would like to make sure we go back to the original scope of the bond measure when we review all this, to make sure as we take guidance coming forward to do this, we're reminding ourselves the promises we made to our community. The net of, on this last page, as best I can tell, Yancy, based on your note, we're $35 million over, the projected cost for all the projects on both phase 1 and phase 2 comes to $35 million more than we have funds available. Is that an accurate?
Yes,
Okay, so I just, in the right, so we got 200 million, we got 200 to spend, and we're 35 short. So someplace before we're all said and done, we need to have a priority process that reflects in both phase 1 and phase 2. Pushing it out from phase 1 to phase 2 doesn't own the fact that, oh, by the way, if you go down to phase 2 projects, and you find things like the Sinaloa multipurpose room, or the stage at San Jose Middle School, the performing arts upgrades in those schools are back here in this list in some place. Somebody's gonna take a stick and whack away these at $10 million at a time, and somebody's gonna end up with, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that, and I got nothing. What happened to, how come I get nothing? And I think, as a public body, we're obligated to have that conversation now. I think we have enough information. Yeah, I think we need to have that conversation now. And I'm not sure we're prepared to have it all tonight, but we're making progress, and thank you for the progress. So the second thing I want to talk about is, we start setting priorities. We established a criteria that we sent to our Citizens Advisory Commission on how to prioritize this, and they created some of their own thinking. And a lot of our friends and people loyal to this school district and to this community served on that committee and put together a list that they thought. And I would like to make sure, before we start deciding what we're gonna throw in and throw out, that we revisit the criteria that we put together and that this district is going to use to include projects and not include projects. Because we're sitting here having a conversation, we'll throw this out and take that in, and it's sort of triage. I mean, clearly, in the short notice that Yancey's staff has gotten, that's not an unreasonable response, but I think we need to have something more thoughtful than just, well, I'll cut that one and I'll trade this one for that, and it sounds like a bunch of people rolling dice in the back alley instead of a public body making a decision, and I would like us to move that process forward and do it in a little more formal way. And so the third point is I would like to make is, I have been in this district long enough to watch us spend good money after bad. I've watched us returf the San Jose track more times than I can tell you, returf the Sinaloa track more times than I can tell you, modify, upgrade, patch the swimming pool at Novato High that after 30 years becomes clearly just a hole to throw money in. And this board took the action to upgrade those one time correctly, got it right. It is something we're very proud of in this community. And if we're gonna do some of these, I would like us not to do half of something like we've done in the past. I would like to encourage us to have the hard conversation to decide what's right and do all of it, do it right, and have it last for 40 or 50 years and not do it in 10 years from now, be going back to the community and saying we need more bond money to fix the because we didn't have the good sense to do it right the first time. So, and I'm not sure who that supports or who doesn't, but I don't want to do a bunch of half solutions. And the last thing I would like to point, and then prepare for conversations, on page 15, there are 3 schools that are listed. They are the ones that are the hottest, they are the ones that are the oldest, and they are the ones that served in my memory, and I would like this number, the largest number of minority population because of the neighborhoods they are located in. And one of our 6 C's and conversations have been everybody gets an equal opportunity, everybody doesn't get the same cost. We have to adjust the cost to make sure everybody can look over the fence the same way. And when we look at these, I don't know if we can afford these or not, but I want us to look at these in the context of every one of the students in Nevada, California gets a chance to have a successful life path. And if we're gonna have dramatically different circumstances, we as a board need to address that. So I'll stop now, Madam President.
So reminder, so these are clarifying questions. I'm going to come back to the board. So Trustee Aguila and Trustee Scott, can you hold off, or do you have clarifying questions just with what was presented to understand something better? Or I just want to see if our principal. Go ahead. Well, Trustee Aguila was first. You can hold? Okay. Okay.
Yancy, I'm just curious, as far as the San Marin gym, I know that there was 10 million associated with that. That seemed really kind of high. And I know that we partnered with the city to do Hamilton. Is that an option that we might be able to do at Sinaloa? I know that they seem to be always looking for space. Is there a partnership we might be able to do to, one, lessen our costs there, but also to get the project done? And I'm just trying to think outside of the box in terms of other things we might be able to do to, one, save costs, but get the project done.
My understanding,
Or no.
and Mark may be able to help me on this one, is that the Hamilton Gym was done in partnership with the city as well as state funding available for joint ventures that encouraged state and or local municipalities to work together on projects. That was excluded from the most recent Prop 51 or Prop 55, the $9 billion statewide bond that was approved by voters at the same time our bond was approved. So the statewide money that I believe was used to help fund 40-50% of that project is not available. I think we can always look for partnerships across the way, and there are people that, gym space is at a premium in this and almost every community. So I think we can look for partnerships, but I believe that the exact funding that was available for the Hamilton project is not available. That's correct.
Just to butt in there, so we talked to the city about the gym before, and they basically said there's no funding that they have. There's the grants that were there before are not there now. So going in, getting help from them on those kind of facilities is not something that's available, at least right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so what I would like to do is, as I said, we have 4 principals here, I believe, and I just want to ask them to come up and just give their thoughts on the projects that we're hearing tonight about their site. I have Jim Larson, Tanya Chima, Mark Brewer, and Mark Sims. If you want to come up and give us some information or feedback from your perspective, that would be great. Just come right up. And you want to come up, Mark?
I just heard my name, so sure.
Yeah. Just say yes to everything we say. No.
Oh, okay.
Just getting your perspective as a principal there and what the need is, the importance of the projects. I know you're brand new, but you're getting to understand that particular site.
I think scope-wise, I mean, we have needs there, clearly, and if you come walk the campus or walk around, some board members have been there, it's clearly evident what's needed. I think if I were sitting in your shoes tonight looking at where we're at, it becomes a matter of how do we take care of those needs and balance with all the other needs we have in the district. Because we have needs that exceed our income. So I would tell you I'd like it all at Novato High, because I'm the principal there. I think the PAC is hugely valuable. We need a second turf field because once you get that in, you can use it all the time, 24/7. Grass, eventually in the winter you can't get on it because it tears it up, and then you have to reseed, replant, and you're just constantly in a maintenance battle. So that second field will be of value because we had a lacrosse meeting and I think another 85 interested students or in that program showed up. So we're expanding programs, which is great because we want to serve a greater amount of students and get them involved in athletics and activities. But we have to have proper facilities in order to accommodate that. Clearly the baseball and softball field, if you come walk them, they're a concern. We have done, this is on Upshot. Greg was there last Saturday at the baseball game, and the landscape people were there. Hummingbird was fixing the infield, and it actually looks pretty good. I mean, they're making improvements right now to help with that, and Greg was there, but ideally, we would want to fix that facility so that it's done and it's playable and we don't have to worry about it in the future. So my take is, I mean, if it was just our school, I'd say do it all right now. But I'm also a realist. I look at things like air conditioning at other sites. That's important to me. I know what it's like to stand in a hot classroom and try to learn. So I want students to have air conditioning. I think that's a huge priority as a district. If I were sitting in your shoes, I'd put higher value on that right now. But also, I want the value of an athletic facility that supports what we want to do to grow our programs. And right now, we just don't have that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay,
very much.
thanks.
All right. Tanya, do you want to? Hi. And just your name and what school you're principal at would be
good
great.
evening. My name is Tanya Chima. I'm the principal at Loma Verde. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you guys on behalf of Loma. I know we have a large contingency here that's here to support. I don't envy your job. I appreciate that you're talking about it being student-centered and student-focused and prioritizing things that, again, are still student-centered and making those tough decisions. But the bottom line is we're approaching it from a student standpoint, too. I'm going to say it, there are a lot of hot days. We start earlier in August. We go later into June. And just if you take everything and kind of find all the hot days that even sprinkle out around other times of the year. And what we're asking students to do, to collaborate, to think, to move around. We're not, I know that Jen Larson spoke to, we're no longer in rows looking in the front, sedentary, just sitting and taking in information. That's not what we're asking our students to do. There's a lot more technology in the classroom, and that also produces heat. And so we're asking kids to move around, to now with the Lucy Calkins adoption, find comfortable spots to sit and read for 30 minutes at a time. And then you picture that with coming in from lunch, even if we kind of leave the morning, it's a little bit cooler. Coming in from lunch, having a good 2-hour chunk in the afternoon, and asking them to focus and concentrate with 30 bodies squeezed in for the upper grades. And add Chromebooks to that, it is extremely hot and the productivity of our students is extremely, extremely low. And we want our kids to be taking advantage of every second of the school day. Loma's in the unique condition that's in raise funds, but just the way the structure is and where our students eat and how close that is to buildings, adding some of the shaded structure involves a lot more than has been involved in the other school sites. So the students are sitting under, shades of trees, and then coming into the really, really hot classrooms. And I just want to say that I think Ross just really hit it on the head. We want to make sure that we're providing students equitable circumstances, learning environments. And our kids, are on teams with kids from other schools. And when they're describing their hot days and what it was like after PE and they had to go back into the classroom and they're talking to someone else that's on the same, softball team, and they're describing a totally different school, it starts to creep into the psyche of our students. And so if we're creating that kind of situation where each one of our students can achieve, we have to provide those equitable circumstances. Anything else we need to add? All right.
You got
Thank
the
you so
thumbs
much for
up,
the
I saw.
opportunity. Huh? Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Jim or Mark, if you could come up. Oh, Jim's going to come up. Okay.
Hi, Jim Larson, principal over at Sinaloa. Thanks for having me. So I guess what I would say is I'm not an unbiased presenter. Like, obviously, I'm advocating for Sinaloa. But I think the first thing I would want to talk to is kind of the robust process that we have when we were developing this. So back in 2016, we were working on the bond. I remember walking door to door, talking to neighbors. We had some staff out there hanging little door signs so that our community could come into the school and see what we had going on and provide their feedback. So in addition to kind of the district level conversations that happened later when we were narrowing down that list, we also had, at Sinaloa, and I think at all the sites, we had, multiple community meetings, multiple staff meetings to really kind of narrow down what we thought was most important for each of our sites. And so when I think about that, one of the things that we were talking about both on site and in the larger district committee later was, is the project going to touch students? How many students are going to be affected by that project? That was one of the prime drivers. Another prime driver in it was, is it going to benefit the instructional program at the site? And so when you look at, for example, San Jose, who had AC, and I think, hey, Sinaloa has AC, so let's get everybody with AC. I'm all for that. What we noted, and we just heard it from Teniat, and I think the other schools that don't have AC is, when it's hot, it's tough. It's tough to learn. So an AC system is going to touch all students at that site, and it's going to help with the instructional program. When I think about Sinaloa, we identified a gym, big price tag there as our top priority. We didn't do that. We didn't come to that in kind of a blasé fashion, or we were pretty thoughtful about it. What we acknowledge at Sinaloa is that we have some pretty impacted programs. So at Sinaloa, we have the highest PE enrollment of any school in the district, 813 kids this year. It's usually around 790 to 830 is at least since I've been there. So a huge PE enrollment, but we actually have inadequate facilities. So we don't have lockers for all of our students. Our sixth graders don't have lockers. They're not able to dress out like the students over at San Jose or at other middle schools in the county. And our gym space is a shared space. So obviously our performing arts program is also in there with our PE kids. We also have the highest percentage of students enrolled in performing arts per, kind of for our site. So roughly 45% of our students are enrolled in performing arts program. And so it really makes for some pretty significant crunch time. The idea with the new gym was that we would, the existing facility that we have would be able to house a lot of the performing arts stuff without impacting the PE program too much. And it would also, there would be a bunch of those other trim tabs where we would be able to extend food service. So our food service facility is like the size of maybe my kitchen for 813 kids. Anyway, so there was a lot of stuff that went into the process. And so when I think of, some of the other stuff, and you guys, I know you're going to make a good decision and figure out what the right thing to do with all the money is. When I think about what it is, I really want to get back to that original process, and I don't want to usurp that original process. A lot of people put a lot of time into that, while also acknowledging that when we have new information, we may want to change the path a little bit. Jim asked me just to mention, you know, is Sinaloa going to be a team player? Yeah, we're going to be a team player. If it has to be a tier 2 project, or we have to create, you know, be outside of the box and community partners, or, you know, it's not a new gym and it's modifying the old space, those things are all tenable. We can make those things happen. What concerns me is as we push these out and we prioritize other things that have hefty price tags, ultimately what we have is 800 or so kids that are not having as meaningful a PE experience as other places and are not having as meaningful a performing arts experience as other places, which is, you know, which is difficult, right? You know, obviously as a person who went to Sinaloa, who's the principal there, who has kids that are coming there, when I was talking to people on the phone on the bond and sitting in the, you know, sitting over in the thing and going door to door and talking to neighbors and old friends, I put my reputation out there as we're going to be doing the right thing for kids at this school. And so I want to be able to look at my neighbors, look at my friends, look at people in the community, and continue to be a man of my word. And when I think about that, I'm concerned that I'm not going to be a man of my word. I'm concerned that if we are, that if we're usurping the process and changing directions, that that I will not have been truthful and forthcoming, and I won't be able to face those people in a meaningful and honest way. So I know you guys are gonna, it's tough decisions. I know you guys are gonna do the right thing because I have every confidence in you. But I do wanna make sure that we're staying true and, you know, when we have that same pathway in front of us to make sure that everybody gets what they need so that their kids can be successful.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Mark.
Good evening. My name's Mark Sims. I'm the principal at San Marin High School, and there was no trickery involved in having Jim go before me. I feel that I'm caught between Scylla and Charybdis here. If I support the air conditioning, which I do, I can't imagine school today without air. Then something will be taken from San Marin High School, and I'm supposed to be the school leader at San Marin and support our folks. So if I support air, then something happens to our PAC center, where I have caught parents falling between the cracks, literally, and had to pick them up before they've injured themselves, and where we pulled a rat out of a backpack the other day because we're infested inside the PAC center. Our students and our staff work very hard, so I have to support them. So anything I say on one end to support my other brothers and sisters, administrators and teachers, then I'm hurting San Marin, and I run the risk of losing the leadership potential that I have at San Marin High School. I've done this for 30-something years. It's all I've done since 1986, has worked in the public school system in a variety of positions. We have a WASC visit coming up, and everywhere I've been, every 6 or 7 years, schools are painted, rooms are painted inside, light poles are painted, extra planning is done. I'm concerned that we won't have that opportunity, and our teachers are teaching in rooms that lack some polish. And they've worked very hard in asking what I've asked them to do in terms of improving the teaching and learning for our students. So again, if I ask for that, will something else be taken away? So I feel like there's no real good answer stepping in front of you tonight, because anything I say for one end, we lose on the other, and I run that risk. And I'm really concerned about doing that. In talking with the MCAL principals the other day, they don't have anybody to take care of the facilities for their athletics that's dedicated for that. It would be nice to be a leader to do that, support our classified folk and CSEA, to have somebody dedicated to keep our sites and all the money we're putting in to performing arts, to athletics, for air conditioning and things of that nature. So I feel like I'm rambling on because I don't want to say anything, but I have lots to say as well. So, and that's why I want to speak after Jim, because he's so very good at what he says. Lastly, I'll speak to the infrastructure that we have, where we have Chromebooks for everyone coming up next year, I believe, yet we're slowing down in what we're trying to operate on campus. So as we ask our teachers, our staff, and our students to use them and utilize them in their teaching practice, yet it's not working, it's easy for them to pull back and not do that as well. So I would hope that Loma Verde and Olive and Linwood and anybody who does not have air is able to get that, because it certainly deserve those students eventually when they come up to us. Hopefully they have the facilities that they so deserve and our teaching staff so deserves, whether I'm there or not. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark, appreciate that. Yeah, you have to do a card. You have to fill out a,
the admins speak for the sites. I'm the network analyst for the school district.
yeah. Or actually, if you work for the district, so you can just come right up to the mic. Yeah, we need that to come up there because we're being televised. Thank you.
Members of the board, thank you for your indulgence. I've heard all the admins this evening speak about equity, speak about how many students each project will touch. The network infrastructure touches every one of the 6 C's. It touches every student, every faculty member, the board this evening, every parent out here who's using their cell phone. Our network infrastructure is the key to this district. We can't operate without it. Every day when I come to work, I log into our firewall. And at about 10 a.m., I see that we have peaked our bandwidth. We can't push any more traffic through it. The network infrastructure is not glorious. It's not something that you can touch. It's not something that you'll see every day. But you'll sure know when it's down. It's used by every attendance clerk, every teacher, every student, whether they're using it for academic programs or they're trying to get around our content filter. I know all you're trying to play Fortnite. I see that. So I urge the board to do what is right, but to remember the 6 C's, which are our guiding star. Content, curriculum, everything, it all operates on our network. And yes, a new gym does cost 10 grand. 10 million, 10 million. Our infrastructure, yes, it's about 13 million to upgrade it. But you saw the photographs. I'm the one who took those. Up on the roofs, it's rusting. It's been sitting out in the sun that bakes our classrooms, roasting at over 120 degrees when that metal heats up. We have indoor rated wire pulled through it, not the stuff that is designed to withstand that heat. It needs to be replaced. And if I sound passionate about this, it's because I am. When I first took this job 6 years ago, I took it to pay my bills up in Santa Rosa. It costs a lot to live there. Somewhere along the way, I started believing in the mission where I'm helping all our students achieve what they need to be able to go to college, to be able to succeed when they get there, and succeed beyond that, to grow up to be the people who design the next generation of technology that I'm working on. Please do the right thing, do what is equitable, support every student in this district. Thank you.
Thank you so much, appreciate that. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to our blue cards. We'll start going through those. So as usual, I will call the first 3 speakers, and if you could just come up and line up. Again, you have 3 minutes to speak. If you arrived after I made my statement, to fill out a blue card, if you'd like to speak before the board, fill out a blue card. They're located on that card over there. Bring it up to Sally, and we will plug you in. I kind of tried to group them a little bit. If they had air conditioning, or if they said specifically what they wanted to speak to, I kind of stuck them together. So, but if I was unsure, they're just all in one pile then. Okay. All right, so our first 3, I believe it's Allie Fisher, Lisa Pearson, and Mariah Fisher. Did you put her name on a card and she doesn't? No, she put her name on a card. She just doesn't want to go first. Oh, okay. So then you go first and then she can go. Yeah, you can trade places, absolutely. We need to hear from our students. That's great.
You want to go? Okay. Just clarifying, sometimes she changes her mind. All right, good evening, thank you. My name is Mariah Fisher. I'm a parent of a 4th grader and a 5th grader at Loma Verde, and I also work at San Jose. First, I want to start by saying thank you for the air conditioning at San Jose. It matters, it's made a difference. I can see it and feel it in the kids. Don't pull this over. They're not coming in sweaty and hot. It just really has made a huge difference in the students. And that's a big motivation for me to come here tonight and try to speak on behalf of my personal kids. You know, they talked earlier about, you know, the idea of this innovative learning and the furniture, and I'm going to be repeating myself when I was standing up here fighting for AC for San Jose, but furniture doesn't matter if it's 80 degrees in the classroom. It really doesn't matter. So the statistics I pulled up from, again, when I was here 2 years ago for San Jose, 19.4% of school days are over 80 degrees. That matters. That's a big chunk. It's almost 20%, where the classrooms are too hot to do their best learning in. When we talk about equitable learning environments, it's not just about the furniture. It's, you know, like has been said already, a lot of schools already have AC. Loma Verde and Olive and Linwood deserve it as well. Hot spots versus cool spots. When it's 90 degrees outside, we're not looking at, you know, there's some magical room on campus that's 74 degrees. They're all above 80 degrees, even the cool spots. Just making sure I'm getting all my points. Let's see. You know, the minimum of the air conditioning that we have at San Jose is at 74 degrees. I'm not complaining by any means, but there is such a huge difference between when I walk into the office at San Jose, when I walk in here. I don't understand why the 74 degrees cap is not across the district, offices and classrooms alike. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I have 30 seconds totally to switch gears. Thank you for keeping the Performing Arts Center at San Jose on phase 2. I'm really excited about it. We're the feeder school for MSA. My students really want something other than an elementary school gym stage, and I'm really happy to still see it on there. So thank you so much.
Woohoo!
My name is Abby Fisher. I'm a 4th grader at Loma Verde Elementary, and I'm here to talk about air conditioning. I think it's important to have air conditioning so you can have the best learning. So I had a 6-page test, and we had 8 minutes to do it. And I was only focused on my heat, and my mind was wandering, and I didn't focus on the test. So by the time my teacher had yelled 2 minutes, I was only in the middle of page 2. So it's really hard to concentrate when your environment's really hot and your mind wanders and you have no energy, and it's just really hard to do your best learning. And I think everyone at Loma Verde would really appreciate it if you would give us air conditioning. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Abby. Lisa Pearson? Yeah.
All right. Hi, board members. I'll keep it short because I think, my name's Lisa Pearson. I'm a parent at Olive. I have a 3rd grader and a 1st grader. And I mean, I'll keep it short because I think we are coming to an understanding that, as people have discussed, you know, the air conditioning for the 3 schools now, I mean, yeah, it is an equity issue and it's a learning issue. And we definitely understand we're going to benefit from all the upgrades for the middle schools and the high schools, and the safety issues for the fields are very important to me as well. But yeah, you know, it starts in the elementary schools. If they don't have a good basis for learning, then we're not setting them up well for the middle schools and the high schools. And this year in 3rd grade, I've been volunteering in the afternoons in my son's classes once a week. And I'm definitely experiencing those hot classrooms. And, you know, I mean, you just see it in the kids, right? They come in and, you know, I help do the small groups, and their focus, even for these small 20-minute tasks, is just really poor, and it's sad to see, because you know they're bright, and you know they could, benefit from these groups a lot more if they were able to focus. So thank you for your listening and for readdressing these subjects. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next three speakers are Rob Corbett, Lee Young, and Heather Smith.
Greetings, Rob Corbin. I'm a parent from my fourth grade daughter at Loma Verde. Just want to note that in your PowerPoint slides, I'm not quite sure how you estimated 1.5 for phase one, but then you go to phase two and somehow that magically came down to 670,000. Not quite sure how that estimate came up, but I'm not into budgeting and nor will I be. I'm not sure how the numbers are so different. The board seems very educated. Just like to have everybody think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're not meeting that. And our students, your staff that you're supposed to be here protecting and representing, so that's something you need to think about. IT infrastructure, very important in today's day and age. With that infrastructure comes heat, which everybody else has already said. In a classroom that's already 80 degrees, 90 degrees, how are you now going to maintain that equipment? That's a real reality that you have to think about. And being an adult educator myself for the government in a building that barely has air conditioner that works, trying to teach adults to sit still for an hour is impossible. Now take that to a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old. It's not going to be easy for the staff that's here, our teachers that are here trying to represent these schools and do what's best for our children. So that's something that I ask you to take into consideration and do what's right. I dare you to go home and cut your air conditioner off, cut it off in this building for a day whenever it's 90 degrees outside and see how comfortable it is for you to do your job at home or anywhere else. Walk a mile in their kids' shoes and see what they have to deal with every single day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lee Young from Loma Verde, and I just want to thank you very much. It's my first experience in a room like this. I think it should be mandatory for all parents to come and endure this long but gift of watching you guys do your work. There's a lot that goes into, obviously, the city and the school, and I think a lot of us take it for granted. I know I have to some capacity, so thank you. I have one child in third grade at Loma Verde. She is my only child. She is my gift to the world, and since kindergarten, we've done our own kind of case study at Loma Verde. I live in Pacheco Valley, so we're southern Novato. And first thing I noticed, one of the first things I noticed when I walked into the school was how great it was, and I'll save that for another time in the interest of time, but how hot it was. There's one hill on the southwest side, residential, that kind of blocks a little bit of wind, and there's just no trees. It's unbearable. Thank you for the statistics, Mariah, 20% of school days being over 80%. 2018 was the fourth hottest summer in California's history, so it's no shock to us in this county, especially that global warming is alive and well. Pay now or pay later. I can go to the NPR route for those of you who listen every day. I turn on NPR. There's something about, not just our class sizes being the largest in the country, but the heat and how it's affecting our children. This 8-year-old daughter of mine, we don't know if she has cognitive impairment or what. We're watching her. It's third grade. There's a learning curve, right, from being a baby in kindergarten, first and second, and now third grade, where the big kid comes out in her. So we're watching her sugar and we're watching her ability to focus, and she's not there yet. And we don't know if it's from the heat. She's sensitive to heat. We have allergies. Allergies have been at an all-time worst this year. And she, last year, came home and said that she was dizzy. She was nauseous. She couldn't focus. And she told us that she was hot. But when she came in our house with air conditioning, she was fine. So, we did our own study. Like I said, my husband's a geologist. We walked out on the field. I took out my iPhone. I looked at the temperature at Loma Verde, and then I went back to Pacheco Valley, and it was 3 or 4 degrees cooler, just in the radius of a half of a mile. 4 degrees cooler from the big, beautiful fields on Loma Verde to Pacheco Valley, just down the street.
I'm not going to give you the statistics. You guys know that the Department of Social Services, the American Academy of Pediatrics, all have addressed the need for temperature regulation. I find it interesting that the education code hasn't set acceptable temperature levels yet. That's another story. Loma Verde is hotter, and while I understand the need for new furniture, and no, I don't mean to discredit anybody, my kid needs to learn, and her cognitive development is so essential. These are our future leaders to, a future I won't see, and my gift to the world. So before I cry, thank you for considering what I think should be non-negotiable climate control for these little babies, our gifts. So thank you for letting me speak.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank all the board members who took the time out to come to Olive to meet with me, to hear what I had to say, and to see firsthand all of the issues at the Olive campus. What I'd like to talk to you about tonight is the thought process behind having the bond money always being heavy in the secondary level. The argument I keep hearing over and over is about putting most of the money into the high schools to attract students for budget purposes. So let's look at that. If you gain students for high school, there will be 4 years worth of revenue. If you focus on getting and retaining students at the elementary level, that will be 6, possibly 7 years if they come in for TK. I was told by a district office employee that when parents pull their kids out for elementary school level, they typically keep them out for middle school too. So that's 9 to 10 years worth of revenue versus 4. I was also told by the same NUSD staff member that they tend to put students back into the public high schools because the private high school is so expensive. So why, again, are you focused on attracting high school students and not the elementary students? Something else that stands out to me is when Kruska shared enrollment levels at the September 14th board meeting, I noticed that the high school has increased in enrollment. I also heard him say that they're almost at capacity at Novato High School. I know what some of you are thinking. The declining enrollment at the elementary school is because of declining birth rates. I have to argue that that is only a small part of it. For those of you who have come out to the campus, you've seen firsthand what potential parents of Olive have seen. There are a lot of parents who take one look at the campus and the test scores and decide to put their kids in private schools. As I have already talked to you about the correlation between classroom temperatures and learning and test scores. A simple Google search on this topic will show tons of research that has been done on this topic. Several people have asked me, why am I still fighting for Olive even though my daughter no longer goes there? It's because I have to be the voice of that 5-year-old who stands out in the hallway crying because she was lost, because she was dropped off at the bathroom by herself because there isn't a bathroom in her kindergarten bathroom. I'm speaking for the Hispanic population who can't speak up because they don't speak the language or they're too afraid to because of the current political climate we are in. I'm standing up for those parents with children with special needs because they are too tired to stand up for yet one more thing to fight for their kids. All of this has cost me a great deal. I've been told by multiple people that I now have a reputation here in this district office. And that's fine. At least I can hold my head high and say that I'm doing what is best for the health, safety, and education for these kids. In the last bond update workshop meeting, it was shared that the top 2 priorities were educational impact and safety of the bond implementation committee. I fail to see how some of these projects creates an educational impact and safety for students. Thank you.
Our next 3 speakers, it's Lisa and I think it's Poncia, and I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. And then I have Gretchen Schubeck and Monica Miller.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Poncha, close. I have 2 children at Loma Verde Elementary School. My daughter Avery is here tonight. She's endured this educational experience. She wasn't quite ready to come up and speak on her own, but she did give input in my comments tonight. There's been a lot of very thoughtful comments about air conditioning and the need for a learning environment at our elementary schools. I have to say I have kept up a bit on the whole thing about the big picture of where the bond money is going. I'm a little surprised at how heavy weighted it is towards the middle schools and the high schools. Of course, my kids will be there one day, but it was a little disheartening to me, to be honest. I don't think that you will find an office building in Marin County that does not have air conditioning, where adults go to work all day, including this office building. I think it's asinine for us to think that our children can endure that, to go to their school where they are all day, where they are expected to be on their best behavior and use their brain capacity to their highest ability, sit still, do all of the things that they're supposed to do in a very uncomfortable environment. Someone mentioned several years ago at Loma, the PTO did raise funds to try and put some shade structures outside. My understanding is that the district would not do that, to play or to do sports, and they're in the sun. They come back into their classroom, it's hot, it's stuffy, it's stinky. It's extremely unpleasant, and I think that we need to put our money where our mouth is in terms of giving all of our students a learning environment that it can actually be conducive for them. Thank you very much.
Gretchen? Yeah, Gretchen, you're still here.
Good evening, trustees. I am now a parent at Olive. I was the PTA president at Linwood for a number of years. My daughter was at school there in the GATE program, and we're now at Olive. So I've had the opportunity to experience both schools. And I don't really want to reiterate what a number of people have said tonight about the air conditioning, but I do want to really thank Trustee Millerick for your comments around the original process, and particularly the criteria that was developed when these projects were vetted. And as a Novato resident who pays property taxes, and as someone who was on the other end of the phone bank, on the phone asking people to donate, to support the bond, I'm really concerned at the number of projects that have either escalated in cost or are new. And one of the things that is a real concern to me were the original promises that were made to people when the bond was talked about. And I would like to see a workshop done where we actually go back to the original facilities master plan, where we communicate with our community. We said we were going to do this. We can't do this now, but we're going to do this instead. And I just feel like the process itself has forgotten about the community that supported this. And while I understand that flexible furniture and new second turf fields are important, I think the number one priority for this board and for every parent of a child at a school in Novato is the health and safety of these kids. I was at Linwood the other day by chance, and a young kid ran into the office needing some ice, and his face was like a beet, and he had sweat running down his face, and he was going to go back into class to learn. And I just don't see how that's possible. And it is a matter of equity, and I think we need to really look at creating a level playing field for every one of our children in the district. Jen, in her opening remarks, talked about innovation and collaboration and flexible furniture and all that. Well, that's great if you have children that are in a space where they can actually learn. And if they're hot and sweaty and unfocused, I don't see how that's possible. I think I'm going to stop there.
Thank you.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Monica Miller. I'm a parent at Linwood of a first grader who is starting the dual immersion program.
And I am Melanie Gutierrez, teacher of said child.
I just want to make a few quick points. And our Linwood, well, first of all, thank you for the exterior painting. That's a separate discussion. But our first PTA meeting is tonight, and one of the line items is we're having a special way to thank you for that. We did not know at Linwood about the first workshop, so we were not represented here. We're not sure why we didn't know, but thank you to the other schools for letting us know about it so that we could come tonight. Linwood, maybe one of the reasons we didn't know is we're really focused on stabilizing Linwood right now. We started our dual immersion. I didn't even tell Melanie this yet, but my son spoke his first Spanish sentences today, and there was accent, and it was beautiful, and it wasn't me and him on Duolingo stumbling around, so it was beautiful. But we're starting our new program with, we were thrown 2 curveballs in the spring with a new, unexpected new principal to launch this program. And we also lost our GATE program, so we have an inexperienced new PTA board. So we're stumbling, we're stabilizing, we're good, but they couldn't be here tonight. So I asked that I have a little bit of extra time if I go over, because those parents couldn't be here because they really needed to be at the first PTA meeting of the year. What we're asking for at Linwood is some clarity. We don't understand why every time we're given new bond information, our numbers are reduced or changed. So what I've done, what I've put together here, and very quickly I was doing this until 5:55 this evening, but I went through each time we've received numbers, which is 4 points in time since the 2016 master summary, and I've summarized the numbers we're given, and I've given the data where I got those numbers from. Yancey and Mike have been so great, so responsive, so I'm not complaining about them. We just haven't had time to organize ourselves for this workshop planning. So we're just really confused. I'm going to go through those 4 points real quick. In the general master plan, Linwood was thought would get 12 million. The remodel site-specific funds were 6.5 million of that. The fans relocation was not included in that number, that 12 million at all. And AC is included as a district-wide cost, not a site-specific cost, which I'm still not sure why the AC is listed as additional costs in our options listed tonight, because in the tier 2 district-wide costs, AC is listed for Olive and Linwood and Novato High. So I'm just not sure why that's an additional cost. The second time we were giving him numbers was May of 2018 at a PTA meeting with superintendent and district facility staff. Our new total went from 12 to 9.7 million with no breakdown given. At this point in time, fans relocation was now included in the Linwood costs with no dollar amounts associated with it. And we were told that the whole remodel, it will happen for Linwood. It has been approved. It will just take longer than expected. And one of my problems with the general plan and raising Measure G funds is that I never saw any timelines in the general plan, and I work in the private sector in finance and also fundraising. You could never raise a $50 million bond without any timelines associated, because then you don't have milestones associated with releasing the bond money. But I digress. August 28th was the next time we received received figures at this workshop, or I just watched the video, and there was a summary sheet shown, and there were actually no figures listed for Linwood on the line items of everything going on. So that was very why is Linwood listed as phase 1 with no dollar amounts? And I screenshot that and put that as well to back that up. And the last data point was today, going through the presentation now, there's a $10 million total. $5.9 million of that is fans cost that is now stated. And if that is applied to the Linwood remodel, then there's actually no funds left over for a Linwood remodel. Very quickly, trying to wrap up here, our take with limited time to review the options is that the options don't actually make sense to us. So we're asking for clarity around the options because we don't know, if we opine on a certain option, we don't know how that impacts our ability to receive funding for our remodel. And I also want to point out that I think it's very strange that AC estimates were at $680K and somehow they went to 1.4 million in 3 years. Like, that is a very strange line item jump. Like, that's a red flag. Something's not right there. And what I want to end with is that the reason that we have values and principles is that, and list them in writing, is that when we have tough decisions to make, that's what we can lean against. And our values as a district on our website, it's about equity and preparing children for work in the 21st century. And so I don't understand on the options why IT infrastructure would be taken out or used to pay for turf fields. Our values are equity and a learning environment. Sports are important, but I want to say that our values reflected is that workshop meeting that I watched, about 3 hours of a 3.5-hour meeting on August 28th. About 3 hours of that meeting was spent talking about sports facilities, and 2 minutes were talked about the Linwood project, and a few comments were thrown in about we need AC for the little guys. So,
Monica, could you just?
Sorry, yeah, that's it. That's my final
Okay,
point.
I don't want to push
that's
you,
it.
but
That's it.
we do the 3 minutes and we let you go over, so.
Thank you.
okay. Can I just, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but you have a page on here that's from our old bond, our first bond.
Yes,
Okay,
so
so you are aware of that. This is
if
our
you read my-
2001 bond.
If you read my summary,
Okay, I'll know
Gretchen
what
was
that-
going to talk about the
perfect.
history that funds were moved from Measure A to the high schools from the elementary schools. And a lot of that money was spent on turf at the high schools. And so when this started happening again, our Linwood community was in like, no, not again. This is happening. Linwood's going to get the shaft again. So I put that in
That's your-
there.
Okay, perfect.
as
Thank
a-
you for explaining that.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. All right, we're going to keep moving here. Our next three speakers are Joel Brand, Ann Atkinson, and Christopher Gilgerson.
Good evening, board. Thank you. Good to see you all. Thanks for the time this evening. I have a recently graduated student from San Marin, a sophomore at San Marin, and a third grader at Olive. Yes, third grade at Olive. Tonight I'm talking about Olive and what's happening there. And, you know, I think we've talked a lot about tonight. We need to go to a baseline and provide a learning environment. Learning environment includes pens, pencils, desks, but really they can't learn unless they can actually think. Thinking includes having a cool environment. Board member over here is actually freezing with too much air conditioning going on right now. I think our children would love to have that ability to put their sweaters on. I don't think that's really happening now. So right now, board, please consider an equitable position of providing an equitable learning environment with equitable heating and air conditioning. That would be great, including the technology. But again, a baseline. We're all about building blocks in education. It seems to me we haven't really done building blocks. We've kind of done big buildings over here, big Eagle project. That looks really cool. Well, let's go over here and do over this. And we're all about building blocks. And we're trying to teach our kids you go from A to B to C to D to E. We've gone to A to double Z somehow in some places, and not even A in other places. And I just like to see. I know we've had a long process here and we've gone through a lot of public comment, but we need to reconsider and really, what's our priority here? Our priority is equity. That's what our school's about. Our whole district is about equity, and we need to rethink equity amongst all the schools. And lastly, speaking on behalf of Olive, there's a lot going on in Olive. We have special needs kids, we have GATE, there's a large minority population at Olive. And our whole thing is equity. Well, special needs kids need good air conditioning. That's going to elevate things for them. GATE has been moved to all. We have a lot going on there. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for consideration.
Good evening. I'm Ann Atkinson.
I am the president of the Marin School of the Arts Foundation, and I just want to thank all of you for all of your very, very hard work that you're doing. I can't imagine the difficulty of the decisions that you have to make. And just as one funny sort of, well, collaborative sort of aside, the Gophers. The woman, Alex, who runs the Hungry Owl Project, lives on my street out in East Novato. And why don't we have owl boxes? What a fantastic project for our product design kids at Marin School of the Arts to build owl boxes and start to get the gopher population under control. We have 3 owls that are in our backyard every night, and they help us keep the rodents under control. So there's something to consider. Anyway, that has nothing to do with poison or gas or any of those other things. Anyway, I have 3 children. I myself went to Loma Verde, San Jose, and graduated Novato High School. Love our Novato schools. My kids started in San Rafael, and by the time my oldest got to high school age, he's an artist. And he was not being treated equitably as an artist in San Rafael schools, and so we came to Marin School of the Arts. He had an amazing experience. So then his younger brother came to Marin School of the Arts, and then he had an amazing experience. So his younger sister came to Marin School of the Arts, but she started at Sinaloa, because by that time we decided time to move to Novato. So we moved our tax dollars and up to Novato, and we talked up that school to all across the county. And now, Marin School of the Arts started as an experiment 15 years ago with 10 kids. We're at 500 kids. We pull in money to the district from all over the county, from Sonoma County. We have something like 10 or 15% of our population now coming down, making that horrible commute from Sonoma. It's remarkable. And the East Bay and San Francisco, et cetera. And I applaud you for investing in the arts. A different spin on equity and education is some of these kids have never, ever been understood before as artists. And they get to come to a school that values them for what they bring besides academics. We all need strong academic programs. My middle son is studying neuroscience at UCLA. I get it. We need strong academics. We need technology. But we also need a place that really supports the arts and continues to invest in the arts. It's paying off. We're so thrilled that you're investing in the Performing Arts Center. We are also all working hard to keep those costs contained. We are raising dollars every day to help collaborate with you and finding innovative ways to pay for that with grants, with money from across the county and across the state. We are doing everything we can to make that happen. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Christopher Gilkerson, Novato High School parent, also on the Novato Sports Boosters Club board. Thank you very much for holding this workshop, the second one. It shows how seriously you all take your fiduciary responsibilities as trustees. I am here tonight to talk about baseball. I will say my kids went to Olive School and Linwood Elementary. All 3 of my kids have been through the Marin School of the Arts, so those are some important needs that you all are considering. I'm not going to go over all the details on why our 50-year-old baseball and softball field need upgraded for safety reasons. Coach Don McCory, who's here, has talked about it rather eloquently. Our terrific athletic director, Michelle Sanner, has touched upon that, Matt Elkins and others. I'm going to follow up on some comments I made to all of you in a letter I sent to you by email late this afternoon about the presentation, supplemented by some thoughts I have after seeing Yancey and his staff's presentation, which was really helpful. First of all, why are there only 3 options, really, that we're considering for air conditioning and for the softball, baseball field? There are many different options. For example, the fans project, okay, that's $5.7 million. Didn't used to be in phase 1, now it's phase 1. I think that's consolidating maintenance, probably really important, but you have to trade off that project, which really doesn't directly touch any kid, with these other needs that we're asking you to consider tonight. That's just one example. The other thing is the importance of looking at a site as a whole and doing it properly one time, and what the economies of scale are. At Novato High School, we already have to move the softball field for the 10-year site plan, moving the tennis court, that's related to the Performing Arts Center, I believe. We ought to do all the fields at once. That makes the most sense. I'm not sure why we're bundling Novato High School's field needs with San Marin High School. San Marin's putting off their second practice turf field. That makes good sense for them. But you also put off the baseball, softball considerations till you have an overall site plan. Our needs are well documented right now for Novato High School, so we should move forward with that. Look at the return on investment. Okay, you're going to save well over $1 million, maybe close to $2 over a 20-year period if you go to turf right now for baseball and softball. Plus, there's really substantial rental income that would come into the district. It would turn what really is a community embarrassment right now, our baseball, softball field, into a community asset that we can all benefit from. And finally, please schedule a final decision at your next board meeting. We really have to make some decisions and to move on so we can plan properly for our student athletes for both baseball and softball at Novato High School. Thank you very much.
Our next three speakers are Michelle Cortez, Wayne Campbell, and Chris Carter.
Good evening, board members. My name is Michelle Cortez, and I am the new assistant principal at Novato High School. My oversight includes Marin School of the Arts as well as SPED, and I also hold equity leadership at my school site. I am in my dream job, and so first of all, thank you for approving my appointment. I sought out Novato Unified because I loved our district's equity work, our graduate profile, and our statement of adult shared values. I really deeply appreciate sitting here and learning in this process, as I also appreciated working side by side with several of you during those equity workshops at the beginning of the school year. To say that as adults we're bound by innovation, being equitable, caring, inclusive, and collaborative is a really special thing. And it's something that me coming from Oakland Unified School District, which I consider the Wild West, is something that on a daily basis I appreciate. I love our tagline, which I understand was inspired by one of our board members. And I am also, in my short time at Novato High, known for doing a call response. We engage, we inspire, we empower. Though I'm new to the district, today I ask the board to align its actions to our shared values and honor the collaborative process that our veteran colleagues invested time and energy in defining and prioritizing. Please honor the initial plans for a PAC at Novato High School. If we have to make budget adjustments, and of course we do, that's a normal part of the process, change is real, then please do work with the people who are involved in that process and not do to or for them. We have a really strong and beautiful culture. It's one that people look for at the elementary schools and the middle schools and the high schools. And the way that we hold up our values is in some of these deep investments that we make. Let's be partners in facing what those current realities are. A positive professional culture requires cooperation and not competition. I would never say to any of our sisters and brothers in the elementary school that AC is not a priority. But at the same time, there are many site decisions that were made, and I think you should trust the stakeholders to make good decisions for the entire unified district and not pit us one against the other by having all of our sites' decisions be something that we duke it out with at the speaker board. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wayne Campbell. Thanks, board members. I'm an architect and a builder, and I'm kind of taking a look at some of these numbers and trying to figure out what the scopes are. I'm having a hard time understanding definition with it, much of this. I do agree with, on one page we have 1.5 million for Linwood, and then on another page we have $670,000. I could see how scopes change. They change every day. Escalations, we did talk about tariffs, that is a real thing. We talk about labor inflations, that is a real thing. But when I look at $238 million, and I've got $4 million for kids to learn, 2% of your contract, this doesn't make sense to me. we're pitting one another? No, I'm sorry. 2%. That's a French fry in this contract, in this bond. And we are still up here. We're even discussing this? This doesn't make sense to me. We're going to hold all of you accountable, just like we're holding our kids accountable to learn in this environment. So I'm not going to beg. I'm going to demand that you guys put AC in these 3 schools. Thank you.
Chris Carter? No? Okay, moving on. Next 3 are Charlie Hayes, Marla Fields, and Matt. Oh, Matt, help me out. Verplates, thank you.
Hi, I'm Charlie Hayes. I'm a Novato resident. I was also asked to speak. I've been a sports official, baseball and football, for 20 years in the county. And if you ask any coach, player, or umpire that's done any sports or any baseball games in Marin County, it's universally accepted that Novato's field is the most unsafe and has the hugest liability risk. It's the same field I played on, in the 1980s. And so when we go to do a game in Novato, we almost have to modify the ground rules. And I see players from other schools that have to look around and find the gopher holes. We mentioned the holes in the fence. And it seems like the opportunities for students to participate in activities on those fields has been diminished because the fields are unsafe. It seems like if there's an opportunity to fix something where you have now opportunities for all the students to participate in, not just those sports mentioned, baseball and softball, but you also have a multi-purpose area for outdoor education, and now you have another staging area for evacuation, emergency drills. Having been a principal before, you have this huge chunk of real estate there that could be used for a lot of many different reasons, and educators will find ways to use a space that is safe and available for use. And as of right now, it's not. So it seems like that becomes financially, it becomes a big sinkhole, if you will. I've seen again coaches invest lots of money to try to have an opportunity for students to be able to play a game, and then we have to go around and assess the damages and see what sort of equipment may or may not finish the game. So it seems like something that has been in place or needed. It's been a big need. As I said, I go around all through the county, and every other school district has taken care of their fields for these various reasons. So thank you.
Hi, Marla Fields. I have 2 students that went through the Novato Unified School District, one who's still there, one who starts his very first day at UC Davis tomorrow. He graduated from San Marin STEM program, but I'm actually here to talk about MSA. My daughter's at Novato High, participates in the MSA program. But before I do that, I do think it's awkward to be here kind of fighting amongst ourselves a little bit. My kids, went to Linwood and went to San Jose Middle School and sat through hot classrooms. And yes, I absolutely 100% support the need for AC at those schools. I think it's not an either or, that needs to happen. But I'm going to explain to you why I think it's so critical that we maintain the MSA PAC. I serve as a volunteer on the foundation board, along with Ann, who spoke earlier. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but we actually bring hundreds of students to the Novato district for this program. Lots of students who, like Ann, come and move here and keep our house prices, high and a desirable area. It's a jewel of a program. We have incredible administrators. Michelle has been an awesome addition to the program. We have really high caliber faculty. Do you know that our jazz teacher had just put out an album and is actually nominated for a Grammy Award? We have an amazing group of students who are totally into it. They're really into their art. And then we have this great board of volunteers. But what we lack is the infrastructure. The dance program right now that my daughter's in, we can't perform at the PAC. It's too small. The stage is too small. We rent a stage. We rent risers. We get a whole group of volunteers that come out and build these things. We rent lights so that we can have performances in the gymnasium. The theater people, they're tripping over each other in that. And it's a great show, but we only have about 100 seats, so I'm trying to talk fast, but we only can let parents come see it, and not even all the parents can come see it. Imagine if we can have the ability to bring in the community and lift up the skirt and see the beautiful, and I don't want to totally say I'm okay with that, but if it has to be, if we all have to make sacrifices, we'll do it. But please, please, please continue forward with the PAC, recognize the importance to the community, how wonderful it is, and also let's get our air conditioning for those students that are coming in. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Verplates, and I have the honor of teaching the classical and contemporary instrumental music programs at Marin School of the Arts at Novato High School. Being a part of Marin School of the Arts is an absolute joy, and it's the best job I've ever had the pleasure of having. We have an exceptional community of students, families, and staff, and MSA shines a really positive light on our school, community, and district. However, the opportunities we offer students are sometimes limited by the constraints of our current facilities, specifically our lack of a dedicated performance space for our many exceptional programs. The size, quantity, and quality of these programs deserve, and in fact demand, a dedicated, quality, well-appointed performing arts center. Having a quality performance space has numerous and immeasurable benefits for our students and community, including the ability for audiences to hear our talented students. The intense, detailed work done in our classroom simply doesn't translate into any gym. The benefits of a well-designed acoustic environment are highly significant in this regard and will allow students to take greater pride in the culmination of their learning. A performing arts center promotes college and career readiness. In MSA, a significant number of our students pursue higher education and professional careers in the arts. An auditorium provides a real-world performance environment and opportunities for students to gain experience in performing, managing the house, working backstage, and others. Having a quality performing arts center would enable us to host events we currently have to travel to, including festivals. We could expand our concert calendar, and we could collaborate more frequently with other community organizations. We'd also have the opportunity to showcase our existing relationships with leaders in our performance fields, which many of our faculty already have. A well-appointed auditorium is just the first step in providing Marin School of the Arts the performance and instructional facilities it sorely needs. A quality performing arts center like the one planned can transform a campus and become the public face of our campus to stakeholders and the community as a whole. Please honor the existing plans developed through consultation with the MSA and NHS staff and administration. The need for this space is urgent, and it needs to be completed on schedule. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you. Last two speakers, Kim Staley and John Smith. Yeah, sure. And then just come up after John, Karen. Yeah.
But before you start the time, I wanted to invite all of you guys. On Friday, we're sliming
I saw
Superintendent
that.
Hogaboom.
I know, we saw
Elementary.
that.
We achieved 100%. Yes. We achieved 100% PTA membership, and so we get a slime Superintendent Hogaboom at 8:45. So you guys are all invited to come to that. So thank you. My name is Kim Staley. I'm the PTA president at Olive Elementary. I have 2 boys in 3rd and 5th grade. As you know, Olive is the oldest school in the district, 66 years old. We have 40% of our school is classified as socioeconomically disadvantaged. We have an old facility, and we need help. In fact, I'd like to invite all of you to come to Olive tomorrow. It's going to be 90 degrees. And you come at 1:30, I'll buy you a Kona ice afterwards, and you can really see what's going on. Our teachers and our staff are going to be miserable. Not only is it hard to learn in that environment, I predict that kids are going to go home sick. And I don't think that that is right. So the first handout I have is my son Weston drew this in 2nd grade. His classroom assignment was to write a small story about a moment in his life. He made an outline, wrote a story, drew a picture, and created what you'll see is this small moment map. And the moment that he chose, if you look in the center, it is entitled "The Day I Barfed." And it would be funny, right, if it wasn't so heartbreaking that my son's most vivid memory at school is not when they raised a bunch of money to go for the Humane Society. It's not when he was Student of the Week. It's not when they went on a field trip to the Walt Disney Museum. He remembers the day he was sick from school. He came home from school, and it was the day he barfed, and that's the day he remembers. And so I think that really air conditioning is a health and safety issue. As the gentleman from Loma Verde said, Maslow's theory of needs, right? That you have to really at the bottom take care of the environmental issues first, and then you can start building. And I really worry about tomorrow, to be honest. I have bought Gatorade. I've washed a shirt that's light, so it's not going to be super hot. I've bought the most expensive water bottle that keeps ice in it all day long, and I'm so worried that he's going to come home sick. And I think that that's not right, that school should not make our kids sick. And that's really what it's come down to. We're all here fighting for the same things because my kids are probably not going to see air conditioning in our time at Olive. We're going to enjoy a gym at San Marin. I went to San Marin High School, so maybe my kids will go to Novato High. We'll see how that goes. But we're the ones who are going to enjoy the Performing Arts Center, the gym. We're fighting for the parents and students who come behind us, not for ourselves. And I think that that's important. The second handout that I have for you is a thermostat picture that was taken yesterday at Olive Elementary. It reads it's 80 degrees. This was taken at 2:34 p.m. in a classroom of 30 kids, ages 9, 10, and 11. So there's 30 kids packed into this room, and it wasn't even the hottest day like tomorrow's going to be. And I just think that not only is that an uncomfortable environment, but you really can't learn in that. I know that there's talk of schools closing in the future. I would say geographically, Olive is so far out there, and we have so many kids that walk to school, I don't think it makes sense to close Olive. My last final statement, along with the other gentlemen, is I would love if there's no air conditioning tomorrow at the district office. I wonder what people would say, how miserable they would be, and then think of our students who are trying to learn in this environment. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. So my name is John Smith, and I had written a couple things to kind of chat about, but I'll just kind of mix it up. I think there's pretty good consensus. We need air conditioning. I think there's pretty good consensus that the kids are having a struggle in the current environment. And so I kind of wanted to bring kind of a little bit of perspective from kind of my world. So I've worked in the software industry for about 20 years, building large-scale IT projects. And one of the things that we talk about on a daily basis is that there's a concept called technical debt. And what that really means is that every decision that you make, you have to be aware of what debt you're incurring in those choices that you make. You can never build a perfect system. You can never build a product that's never going to fail. You can never build a product that's going to be infinitely scalable because, one, you don't even know if you have customers, right? But at some point, that debt has to be paid. At some point, you have to come back and you have to recognize that all those little choices that you made, all those little trade-offs that at the time of the project that you made, if you don't go back and pay those, at some point your system's going to crash. At some point, things are not going to be successful. And so from my perspective, whenever I look at these types of problems, I realize that this board is not the board that made the choices, you know, that make Linwood and Olive and some of these other schools that are 50, 60 years old, that haven't been upgraded, that haven't been remodeled, that don't have air conditioning. I realize that it's not your, you know, the choices that you made. But the problem with bias and the problem with these little inequities is that they build up over time if you don't address them. And so while it's not your fault, I think it's your responsibility to make the changes that should have been made over 50 years, those incremental decisions, those incremental trade-offs that somebody thought, well, we're not going to have to deal with it. We're not going to have to deal with it. I think now's the time, with the money, you know, that's been gathered, I think now's the time to actually pay those debts down, and hopefully we can get not just air conditioning for Olive, not just air conditioning for the other schools, but actually start to see a little bit more equity just for, you know, basic improvements that I think are health and safety issues and basic needs. And let's stop making these trade-offs for maybe some things that are a little sexier, maybe some things that are a little more attractive, maybe some things that you know, look like they move the needle. Let's go back and actually solve some of the real problems. So thanks.
Hi, my name is Karen McCormish, and I'm the 4-5 split teacher at Loma Verde. That's the same reaction I get in class. I remember the process. You remember I came up here, and it was the first time that I had a timer on me, and it was like, oh no. I felt like I had the opportunity to talk, but I actually didn't feel listened to at all. I also felt that way when we were doing that process at our school site, when we were all voting for what we wanted on our school site, and it felt like we were getting stuff jammed down our throat. You need this, you want this, you're gonna do this. We didn't feel, even though we said we were stakeholders, or you said we were stakeholders in this opportunity to decide what was gonna happen on our campus and all the sites, we didn't really have a voice. Somebody had a master plan idea in mind, and they kept on putting it in front of you. I recently had a telephone survey call me, and it was about because the new gas taxes went into effect, you know, the extra, oh my gosh, I guess so expensive. And they said, one of the questions was something like, would you rather have the gas tax go to fix your roads or have an increase in crime in your area? I'm like, what? What kind of a question is that? That's what I felt like the questions were when we were going through this process initially. But something that made me really want to speak was when the person from MSA came up and spoke. Yes, when I live in Kentfield, I don't pay taxes here. I'm a teacher here, and I'm committed to being a teacher here because I'm committed to equity. And when I first heard of MSA, when my little ones were little, I thought it was a private school. I honestly did. People were talking about applying to MSA, and I think that's fantastic. So I challenge MSA and this board to start creating more partnerships, and don't just ask someone, is there another way we could develop a partnership to pay for this? And someone says, well, the way we paid for it last time won't work anymore. And you just kind of go, oh, okay, well then never mind. I would never let my students say that to me in a classroom. If I said, what did you try? And if they said, I tried this and it won't work, I'll say, what are you gonna try next? So I challenge you to come up with other partnership opportunities and tap your alumni and tap whatever you can. There's so many alumni right here that keep coming back to Novato, keep coming back to the school district. Ask them to start making contributions to have these beautiful performing arts centers with somebody's name on it who's made a name for themselves in Novato schools. Don't just roll over and say no, take no for an answer.
Okay, thank you everybody for speaking. I know some of you have already left and gone home. But we truly appreciate, I've said this before, I know it takes a little bit of time to get through this, and we feel like we've heard the same thing over and over, but it's important that we hear your voice. It's important that you show up and speak, otherwise you could just have the 7 of us making a decision, and we don't work that way. We work with collective voices, and we try to listen. You're not gonna like, every time we make a decision, may not like it, but you know that you've been heard, and we've looked at all the options. So, Yancy, could you come back up? And there was a couple things that, I think I know the answer to this one, but the Loma Verde cost of AC was $667 on one spreadsheet, and then $1,500,000 on another spreadsheet. And I think that's because.
So I think there's a couple things just overall, and I don't mean this in a denigrating way at all, because this is how it was done. We had an architect put together our facilities master plan, and how architects break out costs are probably different than how Todd would break out costs and do things. The architect is going to do it in a much more design-oriented way, but when Todd looks at it, he's going to say, well, you combine this, and this, and this is a project, and this is what we move forward. So the first thing is there are some things up above the line that you will see in our, and I apologize this, because this is where there has been some confusion, and I will take the blame for that, is within our projects we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then we've talked about some things, so there's confusion. But at that top level, that we broke our projects into 3 different levels in the facilities master plan. The first were basic upgrades, which include ADA, which included some electrical, which included some other stuff. The second was district-wide priorities, and the third was site-level priorities. The problem is when you look at these projects, sometimes you have to, take a little from column A, a little from column B, and a little from column C. And it also is where the Linwood, I'm sure the confusion on the Linwood project comes with as well. So I can answer that question separately. So a little bit of it comes from the fact that probably some of those electrical upgrades and other things like that were included above in that first tier, and you got to kind of pick out some of those costs. That our budget was kind of a design holistic approach, not a here is the 14 projects that are going to be done as we would bid them out to the street. The others is that it was just low. It was just not adequate to do the project. And when we came in and we looked at it, the projects at the middle school, the San Jose project was actually relatively correctly budgeted and sized. The project at the elementary school, they weren't. The other differences, and this is as we note of economies of scale, is when you go in and you do a standalone project for air conditioning versus if you look at what's the cost of an air conditioning project as part of an overall modernization, that's a different number. And so really it's kind of those 3 factors in the tier 1 upgrades, smaller of it. The fact that it was probably a low budget, and we probably should have budgeted more, that's a bigger part of it. And then also you add on top of it that there is a cost of doing that as a standalone project that would not have as part of a modernization. That would be the third. So sorry, I kind of went on a little bit on that one, but that's where it is. But I would say the middle part of that, the budget was just probably too low on the elementary AC projects. And as we got into the detail, we realized that.
So some of these newer numbers are the more realistic costs.
Those are the realistic cost of doing them as a standalone project. Yes.
Great. All right, so back to the board. What I would like, I'm just trying, Yancy, maybe to clarify what your outcome is for this evening, what you're looking for from a staff perspective, and so then I can take it from there and we can go with the questions of the board.
So the first, and Trustee Nell kind of brought it up, so I want to be clear, is that our status quo note is that this was our current plan. And so, I would like to get kind of a nod that, yes, continue with the current plan. If there are changes to that, I would like direction on that. And then I would like to have some direction on the process of bringing back, because a lot of what I heard around here of, potentially pitting things against each other and doing things in this fashion, really, it could be some of the work for the bond implementation committee as we work there. So maybe some direction on, we gave you a schedule, which I believe is an appropriate schedule of doing that. And sorry, thank you.
Page 10.
And so, as kind of we noted, some of the questions really aren't, what's going from phase 1 to phase 2. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean to say that, a project that doesn't get done in 2020 or 19 and gets down in 2021, that's not an impact. The larger impact are the projects that likely will to move from getting done with the $222 million of Measure G funds, and then the projects that we're going to need to look for other potential funding sources for on that. So I would like some direction on continuing forward with this process and anything that the board would like to add.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted everybody to hear that. Trustee Scott, did you?
I just have kind of a question for my fellow board members, and I want to share some concerns. We all know that we're in flat and declining enrollment, and that there is a possibility that we may have to close the school at some point. And, I want to fly at 30,000 feet, and I want to know ahead of time if there's going to be additional funds. I certainly don't want to put Measure G monies into a school that we might be closing. This is just food for thought. I mean, I don't know where you guys are all standing, but I'm just thinking in my mind, if these are some things that are going to be happening in the future, I want to plan, as most efficiently as we possibly can with these funds. I mean, we already know between the tariffs and the fires that the escalation costs, we don't have the money to do what we wanted to do. And, again, here we are, revisiting this yet again. And, we're not going to get to everything, and I understand that, and there are tough choices to make. As far as the AC in the field, I see those as safety and health issues that need to be addressed. But I'm also just really concerned about that possibility, Yancy, and it just really makes me nervous that you're asking us to, ideally, this going back to the sites to have them maybe weigh in again is fine, but, it's fine if they do that, but if they do that and then we have to close the school, I don't know. I'm just, I'm frustrated, and I am, I want to do the right thing on behalf of all the kids and parents that we serve, and I want to operate with these funds in the smartest possible way with the most efficiency that we can possibly do. So, I need some help from you in order to kind of know what path we may or may not go down.
So in terms of, and I won't be able to give you complete, but I will say that the elementary school size committee, you'll see a report at the next week's board, so come to next week's board meeting as well. That process, the first part of that process will be done in the fall of this year, and any follow-up work would be scheduled for the spring, depending on what the recommendations of that committee are. And so those decisions likely would be made prior to any impact to the current projects. So I think we would have that information, I guess, is my answer to that before we made any commitments moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, anybody? Okay, Trustee Mack, then Trustee Miller.
You probably know where I'm going to go. Would it be, and I'm going to just ask for the indulgence of the president, if it makes sense to pull up the spreadsheet that really lays it out. Let's just see everything and know, because I know there's a lot of confusion on options 2, 3, and 4. But your call. That's.
I mean, that's a discussion amongst us, the 7 of us, if we want to have that spreadsheet that Trustee Mack created for his usage.
No.
And that, okay.
No, what I would like to do is.
Well, let's just hold on. Let's just double check with everybody.
To be clear, this has no proposed changes. It just outlines what Yancy showed on the PowerPoint, but makes it a lot clearer a lot easier to understand. That's all it does. Also, last point I want to make, yeah, it's just a list. And it gives you the option of plugging in numbers wherever you want. You can see immediate impact. You can really see if you're going to make a change, what it's going to do. So I think it's going to be a valuable tool for all of us to see it and take home and work with it. But I think you walking through it and showing how it ties exactly to your presentation and how you approved it would be helpful. Last point I want to make, we need an option 5. Right now, 4 options pit AC against turf. We need another option that allows us to try to put it all together. I know I'm asking for a lot. I know it's a big number, but I'm not here to pick a side. I want to find something that helps everybody as best we can. And just picking a side is not going to work for me. So and that's why you'll see that there's a tab in there. You decide what you want to do with it. That just shows everything all at once. Doesn't say what's right, just shows them all.
Would other trustees like that as a visual up on the screen to see the list of the projects?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Okay. All right. We're going to go forward with it. The majority of the board would like to see that.
You're actually the closest one.
Get your glasses on.
New computer. All right, that's about as good as I'm gonna do.
Read off with a couple of them.
So basically, this goes through each project, and so the column here is the projects. It then notes what has been spent or is in contract for on this column. The committed column notes really where we're in that detailed design process that we talked about. And then these are the estimated costs that we aren't through schematic design on those projects. So that's the kind of the 3 columns we talked about earlier on those earlier slides. So that does match up. So it picks to the, oh, darn it, sorry, I picked the wrong, no, that's fine. And so it has total. So we've got, sorry. So we have the $131 million of projects that we noted, which is $27 million more than the funds that we have available prior to 2021. I think it was someone actually asked to clarify. There are an additional, $115 million. So this isn't the projects that have been approved in phase 1 just would be done in 2021, not maybe not done. So, but we have the 131 million. And then here are all the additional projects that were recommended or asked for by the community to look at, including the 3 AC projects at $1.4 million to $1.5 million.
Hey, Yancy, excuse me. Is there some way you can show the top header, or the header at the very top of the columns?
Go to cell C2 and then go to view and then go to.
Well, if I freeze it here, freeze it at C2. Okay.
Yeah, freeze it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where's
View. Freeze space further over. There you go. Bam. Okay, now scroll down and it'll stay there.
Good suggestion. Thanks.
All right.
Put a number down.
So this has all of them. So it has the 131 million, and then another 14 million of projects that were asked to be considered, and that's the 145 million. So what this also includes is a column if we wanted to look at a scale reduction, or to look towards deferring the projects to 2021 or later, in the case of the maintenance projects that are scheduled along the way. And so this already has the quote-unquote status quo of where we had updated the board in the most recent update. So it has the deferred maintenance out to when it's scheduled, the Linwood Elementary School remodel. It has the Sinaloa Gym, and it has, it should have the San Marin. So roughly at that 104 number right there. And then if we needed to go all the way out, so basically as we're at right now, we would need to defer $16 million of projects to 2021 or reduce the scale somehow on the projects if the board wanted to add all of those projects into prior to phase prior to 2021.
That $16 million jobs with something that's on your report tonight?
This is the all, this we didn't, this is option, would be option 5, if you did everything. We showed it as a little bit different, because there were just a lot of moving pieces if you wanted to do X, Y, or Z, so.
And to be clear, you can show option 4, 3, 2, or 1. You can see the differences there.
Yeah, each option there is included. So.
No. This is just the inserts. All the inserts are on that tab.
When you say inserts, I don't know what inserts mean.
It's what they're using as a term on the presentation, the new projects they're inserting. The 3 ACs and the San Marin and Nevada.
So it's the projects we talked about in this room last week with 2 minor groups, not everybody in the district, and we call that a foundation for a decision. I think that's my problem with this spreadsheet, is it basically puts in form factor the Sinaloa program. It ignores a whole bunch of the community, and I think it's inherently flawed in the presentation. I would love this spreadsheet, yours, I would love this spreadsheet prepared by the district staff in a way that treats every project equitably and brings it back to the oversight committee and then back to us, so we have a foundation to look at this. But I think we keep looking at this through broken glasses and a bent lens, because we're seeing it through whoever's sitting in the room the day we look at it. I think this is flawed. And I spent this afternoon sitting as the chair for the Construction Oversight Committee for the College of Marin. That's a job I have in this community. And we have a program, the district controls every project that was initiated in the bond. They control when the budget changes, the board has to vote on budget changes. Not spent, but budget, they have to vote on any changes to the actual spend. This process that we're following here is a bunch of spreadsheets that keep bubbling up, and I think we need a process that controls this in a much more significant way, so everybody in the community knows that this board is in control of the money we're spending, and they can track every penny that goes through this. I think we're way ahead of ourselves. I think we need to have our CFO and our bond committee step back and realign all of these projects and put them in a place where there is auditable control for every change in the budget. So the board voted on it and accepted it and approved it. There's an audit change for every change in expenditure. When we approve a project, we approve it. And right now, as the audience has pointed out, we have different numbers on different pages coming forward. And here we have a page that doesn't even include all the options. It includes only the one discussed by the 2 interest groups. I think we have a big problem. I think our credibility before this community is in significant question because of the way we're doing it. So, my criticism applies to both ends. I think we need a system that goes back to the community and asks everybody who's walked precincts, made phone calls, and put their reputation on the line that we are going to spend the money to support Novato. We need to get this process cleaned up and realigned, and that's where I think we need to go. I think we need to go back to an oversight committee and give our chance to take a breath. There's $38 million of something that's not going to get built. That is a big deal. It's a big deal for everybody in Novato, and it shouldn't be us being frustrated with each other. We should have a way for we as a district to be able to bring the calm to these waters and be able to move our community forward. And I think bringing up 10 different copies of spreadsheets is not the way to do it. I think getting it in the hands of a committee to clarify this with the extra effort it's going to take to put a solid bookkeeping system around this for both budget and expenditure is what we need to do. I'm very frustrated by this evening.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Trustee Miller. And just, I haven't been able to say anything. I've been trying to keep the meeting going, but I'm actually in agreement with Trustee Miller, and I have been from the very beginning of this whole thing, of all the meetings that we've had, that it has to go back to the Bond Implementation Committee. Not everybody's in this room. Everybody's in this room that is in urgent of a project that they want to speak to, but there's other schools that aren't in this room. And we need to, we have this bond notation committee of 50 people who we have said, we want you to handle the projects. We want you to decide, you look at all of the criteria, and going back and revisiting the criteria, as you said, Trustee Miller, I think is important too. So I would, for me, moving forward is to somewhat of the status quo, I guess you could say, or no change, to do that option one, and putting it back with the Bond Implementation Committee. That's the work we told them we wanted, and that's where it belongs. And then it comes back to us. We approved this facility master plan in 2016. We're 2 years from when we approved it, and it's already changed dramatically. And I don't want to go one step further until we relook at everything. Things have changed. Needs have changed, and I don't want to nitpick a project or a school's project here at this table. It needs to go back to that committee. So that's my 2 cents. All right, Trustee Aguila, Trustee Cooper, and then Trustee Nell.
So, well, anyway, I wanted to just thank Trustee Mack for, this, to me, I feel the frustration. I see what people are talking about, but it is our due diligence to look at everything. And if a trustee is bringing an opinion to me, I look at it as, okay, he worked, this is not easy to do. He worked hard to come up with his numbers, it's not easy. And I thank you for that time. And I think that we should, look at everything. It's our job to look at everything. When it came for the lights, we went to schools, we did everything that we could do. And so, I don't think we need to be frustrated. It's frustrating that it's taking so long, but we are known for a district that takes our time. And some people may look at it and say, oh, come on, move faster. But on the other hand, we are taking our time, but that tells us too that we're, dotting our I's, crossing our T's. Now, I was one of the trustees that showed up on a Saturday, and I went to Olive. I got an email. Saturday morning, I checked my NUSD email, 9:30, and it's a parent that wants to meet at Olive, because by 11 o'clock, I was already with her at the school. And, I think everybody in here cares, everybody in this room, especially everybody in this table. I think we're all here because we all want to work with and for equity. And being Mexican, and being a trustee, it looks bad that Olive, Loma Verde, and Linwood need the air conditioning. Now, why does it need it? It doesn't matter. The fact is, we need to get things fixed. We need to look at things. We need to prioritize. To me, I think we need to prioritize everything on page 16. Is it 16? Yeah. So let's, option 4, and let's look at that, in my opinion. We've met, this board, we've met on a Saturday, we've met on Sundays, we met today, is not a regular board meeting. We're dedicated. So to have people come up and talk with us, I'm hoping that you guys feel that we're here to listen to you. And of course, we're not going to please everybody, and we just want to make sure that all of us that we're doing the best we can for all our kids. And so, so I say let's slow down with some things, but let's take a look, and whatever we can speed up, let's speed up. And as adults, it was. I have to say, I was a little disappointed with some of the principals or in particular an adult who said, you know, I wish we could fix everything. Well, we all wish we could fix everything, right? We all do. And to me, I was so pleased with the one parent that got up there and says, listen, we can sacrifice this in our school. So wouldn't it be wonderful if some of our staff and some of our principals would come in and say, listen, we understand that there's a health and safety issue, and we're willing to sacrifice this so that our students would be healthy and safe. But you know, that's just, we're gonna at the end up making these decisions. You know, what's important is that we're here, we're showing up, you guys are here, and I just want to say thank you for that. And I wish that, one thing that I think is a problem was at the very beginning where some people were not represented. And I said that before, and I'll say it again, like Olive, you know, it wasn't representative. And so I'm hoping that there's a way in the future when we do this again that to make sure, and hopefully our superintendent will make sure that we can, all the sites are represented, not only one person, but at least a minimum of 2 people. There's a magic in the number 2. And because even if one person comes in, then there's a possibility where people say, well, where does this information go? Where this one person went to the meeting and she gave her input, or she's bringing, or what information is this person bringing back to the schools? So it's something to look at in the future, and just by the way, it's not good to either be too cold or too hot. So I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Trustee Cooper.
So as we all know, and many of our principals and teachers and staff said tonight, that we're in the teaching and learning business. So we know that. I think the things that rise to the surface with me, first of all, I do agree with the process that we've been doing. I think that's something we have to respect, and I think that's something we have to revisit. But when it comes to health and safety issues, I don't mind talking about it, and I think we should. With respect primarily to the air conditioning that's mentioned in option 3. So I would be supportive of, just take a deep dive here, option 3, and possibly look at, I think the IT classroom toolkit and the infrastructure upgrades are really important, as we heard from one of our staff members tonight. But I think that the furniture project, we could possibly pare that back at the expense of, we don't want to do any of this, but where are our priorities? What's our priority? Our kids are barfing. Their faces are bright red coming in the office. Those are examples clearly, but nonetheless, that's kind of what I would like this board to do at this point. And then what Trustee Millerick and Trustee Butler, pardon me, President Butler, please, suggested and bring it back to the committee.
Great, thank you. Trustee Nell, and then I'm going to turn it to Superintendent Hogaboom.
Well, I want to thank everyone who's spoken tonight and brought up the issues. I certainly don't really disagree with any or many of the points that were made. Health and safety. Why wouldn't I want to put air conditioning in the elementary schools? Why wouldn't I want to make the most economic decision about fixing the safety issues at our athletic fields? You know, it's about priorities, and so, you know, I'm just going to cut to the chase. I mean, it's late. The reason I think what I think maybe is not as relevant as what I think we should do, and to offer some contributions here. I at the last meeting said, you know, we need solutions. I appreciate the staff trying to come up with some solutions. However, I don't think we're there yet. I just don't think we have the answers. I suggested before that we move up the replanning schedule from the fall 19. I said we should get on that right away. I think that looking at things in a linear fashion with instant mathematics applied is a good idea when you're having a conversations, because it's difficult when you have different people doing different calculations and different formulas. So to Trustee Milrick's idea, I think all of the projects, including the ones on the last page that were omitted from the public document but are here tonight, should be on a spreadsheet. So we can go direct our committee and be as active as possible, but we know we're 35 million short of getting to the end of this list. So why are we not addressing it? And when it comes to the, like air conditioning is on the list for the elementary schools. It's here. I mean, the number wasn't high enough. It was prior towards later. The issue of the high school fields is on the list, but in the same way that the theater at San Marin was on the list, we thought it would be less money. But the goal was to solve the health and safety issues. When you talk about a high school and the sports participation, we're talking, I'll underestimate 400 students. That's more than an elementary school participate in high school athletics. So it's very, very vital, important program. We have to solve the problem. Like Trustee Miller mentioned earlier, I'm tired of throwing money down the grass hole, the gopher hole. We have spent millions and millions of dollars. And the reason that that's important is we are deficit spending. So I've said this before, I mean, it makes fiduciary sense to capitalize the field to save ourselves $1 million in operating funds so we can pay to run the air conditioners at the elementary schools. So this kind of thinking is not getting, raising up to the top, and I think the spreadsheet will help us get us there, but let's put in air conditioning. But I've been asking for 2 years, what's it gonna cost to operate these things? What are the savings? The installation going to save us money. When we had a discussion over San Jose air conditioning, I was never against air conditioning at San Jose. I wanted to make sure that we did it as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I wanted everything to be considered, and we went ahead with the project, and it's a huge success. I'm glad to hear it. So at this point, I think we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to move the planning up, start right away. We're 35 million short, probably going to even be less than that. And we need, the reason that the fields are at the top and the air conditioning has risen to the top, and there'll probably be some other things that will rise to the top, is going to be based on need. It's just that simple. And one of the biggest needs we have is operating income. We're deficit spending. Our teachers want to be paid more money than we can afford to pay them. I'm looking for ways to save money from an operational perspective, and I want as much investment of this dollars to go into that type of thing. So we got to pay for it. If we're going to put air conditioners in, we're going to have to pay to run them, but we still have to find a way to pay our employees more money as well. So to date, turf in those fields is the biggest operational savings that this program has to offer. That's why I want to do it. So let's go back and come up with a plan that acknowledges the 35 million shortfall and reprioritize based on the needs that have come to the surface.
All right. Do you want to go? Yeah, I have Greg and I have Shelley.
I'll be really
Greg
quick.
And then Shelley.
I'll just be very
Okay.
quick. I totally agree with going back to the drawing board. We need to do this right, and we need to do it with everything there, and we need to use a tool that we all can trust that adds up. And I think a spreadsheet, taking the skeleton that I got and you guys run with it, give us something to work with on our own and bring into a meeting, and then we can decide, we can actually at least have an idea of how the numbers plug and play instead of these fantasies sometimes that maybe I might have at times. So, but the other point I want to make is going back to the drawing board, totally agree with that, but what about time? Time is money, and I'm worried about that, and I guess that's where Jim's going to go. So I want to make sure we balance those two. Because especially that big ticket that's growing by the month, that $25 million project, we got to keep it there. And I'm worried that if we're slipping, that thing's going to grow and it's going to kill all this stuff. So time. I just want to make sure we don't slow down the big ticket stuff that costs us a lot of money. But at the same time, we got to make decisions. So.
Thanks. Trustee Scott. Oh.
I'm sorry, I just,
Eric went.
you know, trustee Mack's question was about time. And so that basically, essentially, it puts us with the option one on to proceed. That we're pushing back the $25 million. And until we come up with a plan how we're going to deal with that $25 million and the balance of the fund, we're just going to do with what we've committed to do.
Yep. That's sort of where we're at right now, but trustee Scott. Yeah. I want to have Superintendent Hogaboom speak, so.
No, and I don't want people to misunderstand me when I say slow down. You know, we do need to slow down, but when it comes to health and safety stuff, we also need to like move quickly because, you know, I went to Loma Verde. I remember the sweat. My niece goes to Loma Verde. And so you know, kids only have one time to do first grade, second grade, third grade. You know, they only have one time to do this, and so there is an urgency. But let's go back. I agree with going back and including all the information and maybe using his skeleton, and just move forward.
Trustee Scott, you want to add anything to that? Or?
Well, I just want to say to my fellow trustees, I appreciate all your comments tonight. I know that this board really cares, and for me, it is about the safety and the health issues. That's why these have bubbled to the top. It's a concern for the community. And I think going back to the stakeholders, I just want to make sure that because these have bubbled to the top and comments that I've heard from various folks at the various sites was that, one, they didn't know, two, they didn't understand the process. So I would just want to make sure that there's a lot of communication going out there. I don't know if the same folks that were on the committee are still available to be on the committee, but I would just want to ensure that you're going to have folks at the sites giving input. I want to make sure that the stakeholders have input. I mean, I want to go back to them, but I want to make sure that they have input. I want to make sure that the communication is there moving forward. That's my comment.
Great, thank you.
I would recommend.
Superintendent Hogaboom.
Yeah, I would
No
recommend.
more Maria. No.
I would recommend, like I said, at least 2 people from each
Yeah, you
representing
did
each
say
site.
that. Okay, thank you. Superintendent Hogaboom.
So I have a key question that we need answered tonight. You asked staff what we need from you. I want to cover that. I want to cover 2 suggestions, and then I have a recommendation for you all to consider. And to Shelley's comment, that this is not easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't be sitting here going over it. Things change. To your most immediate question, Shelley, Yancey and I were just looking at the people who are on the Budget Implementation Committee, and a lot of them are not here anymore, or they moved on. Thanks to Jeffrey Valiant. Whenever I look at him, I think of him as our key community member. Thanks for being here. Doesn't have kids in the schools. He was on that committee, so there are some that are here, but things change. So the first thing is, what is the key question? The key question that the staff and the community need your help with right now is, what is in phase 1? That's all that we need from you. We need to know what is the $103,750,000. That's the immediate need. You also do need to consider the long term, and I do appreciate Ross saying, so that's the key question though. That's the priority issue right now, that there's a time sense that we need to know what's in phase 1, because if we don't get to that for another 6 months, we're not gonna be able to get things done. So our question to you is, what should be in phase 1? So that's what we need direction on. The 2 key points, the first one is, there's scarcity. There's limited resources. We don't have enough money to do all the projects. So with all due respect, Greg, we can't say do all the projects. Some of these projects that are in this page are not going to get done, right? It's not going to happen. And that's the tough call that eventually you'll have to make. I do agree that, so for phase 1, we need to know what is in phase 1, but there are limited resources. We can go get grants, we can try to work with other people, but that's not going to solve our problem. There are projects that are identified that are not going to happen, and things change and prices go up. And maybe mistakes were made and things could be, but the fact is you can't always anticipate that. So we don't have enough money to do everything we need to do. We need to be open, transparent about that, and you're eventually going to have to make some tough calls with that. but there's scarcity, there's not enough resources, and we don't have enough money. My second point is we had a strong process in place. The bond implement, and Jeffrey's here and other people were on it, you can talk about it, and it wasn't a perfect process, and maybe there weren't 2 people from every school, but there was everybody here. There was a principal from that school here. There were not all elementary schools had more than 1 people, but there were parents, there were teachers, there were community members, there were administrators, and it was a damn good process. And I really thank Yancey and Bob Ferguson helped us with it, because they did. They came up with the list of priorities, and I think as Heather mentioned earlier, I don't remember all of them. The first one was the educational impact. The second was safety. There was a lot of very, very thoughtful work that committee of 50 people did, saying, what is the criteria? Then there's a lot of work saying, well, is it a need, is it a want, or whatever? So that list was not perfect, but it was a damn good list that involved a lot of listening from our community. So I think we need to respect that process. And we need to go back and use it. But that doesn't, right now, that's not going to help us with our immediate concern. Because the immediate question is, we have a process that made some recommendation, but some things have bubbled up. So that'll lead me to my recommendation about what the top most important $103,750,000 should be that I'd like to bring back for you guys, because tonight's not a decision-making thing anyway. So what I would say is, the air conditioning has bubbled up as a health and safety issue, okay? Loma Verde and Linwood had it in their plans, and it made it to the facilities master plan. Olive also had it in their original facilities master plan, but then when there were other issues, it fell off, okay? So what? But when things change, and if it's a health and safety issue, we need to take care of it. So my recommendation would be that we go ahead and find a way, and we'll bring back to you exactly where that money would come from and some other options for you to think about, but those projects need to get done. People have already said it. It's a health and safety issue. If you're too hot in the classroom, you can't learn no matter what. So our recommendation would be do those projects. We'll find a way that's $4,400,000 that we need to get done. In terms of the fields, what I would say, my recommendation is that 2 things. One, there is a health and safety issue with the fields. We will bring back to you in even more detail what we will do to get those fields up to speed and be health and safety. And to your point, Trustee Nell, it is going to be throwing some money down the tubes in the short term. In the short term, keep those fields up to speed. We're going to have some contracts with some people to get rid of the gophers, to get the thing, whatever, resodded or whatever it takes to get those up to a playable, respectable level. We will promise to do that. And in return, my recommendation is to put off the fields, with the exception of the second turf field at Novato High School that you've already approved. It's already crucially needed, not just for sports, but for PE and everything else. Can be used to help with baseball, can be used to help with lacrosse, can be used to help with soccer, can be used to help with football. That second field will be used by almost everybody at Novato High School. So I think we go ahead with that, but we put the baseball fields, the softball fields at both Novato High and San Marin off into phase 2. And we promise in return to take care of the fields until those are done. And then we convene whenever we need to in the next 6 months, the bond implementation committee to look at everything else in phase 2, because that's one that we can all have our opinions, but that's when we need our community's input. We will convene together the 50 people with some new people on the bond implementation committee, and then you will have to have the final result, but that way we get the input. So that's my suggestion is the recommendations for the short-term 103,000 is do those health and safety things with air conditioning and put off the fields until phase 2. In the meantime, we will bring to you next week, because you had asked for this, Trustee Mack, is the details of what is that. We gave you kind of an outline. So that's what I would like to bring back to you as a recommendation, and that's where we are.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, so to get us to, as Superintendent Hogaboom, what is in the phase 1, the 103, that's their number one thing that they need from us. Is that where you could we could use this slide on page 11?
Yes, that is our current plan without change
Right.
at this point.
Page 11.
Yeah, this matches what we've updated the board about the timing of these projects.
Okay. So that would be one approval. Yes.
separate from the dollars that we're gonna talk about in a minute, is the superintendent's proposal to reconvene the oversight committee and review this process, starting with a value, restating values and moving forward? Is that part of the proposal?
Yeah, my proposal would be to make a decision on phase one, and then can you go to the one on?
I want to talk about that too, but
Okay.
I want to know if you're saying, let's
I got it.
let's reconvene the.
Yeah, so my thing would be, give us direction on phase one, and then follow this one. We would go back to each school site and kind of have them at community meetings review what their list was, because maybe things have changed. Identify the adjustments and updates that need to be made, and then number three, convene the.
Oversight process.
Right, let the schools give us, yeah, and then do part number three, which is convene the board implementation committee and prioritize all remaining process. So I would just insert 1A, which is, we need the direction on short term.
Because to me, the failure here is we're not going back to the community, and I want to make sure that's part of the
No,
proposal.
I think we,
Okay,
that'll-
I
I
didn't
think
hear it.
that'll
I'm just-
happen,
okay,
yeah.
good, okay.
and just to, we have an oversight committee and we have the bond implementation committee. There's two different things there, so make
And I
sure.
have some other comments, but
Okay.
it's about money, so.
So,
All right,
Superintendent,
Yeah.
which option did you just describe?
Yeah, I'm looking at that as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it might be
more
option
the-
3, but I'm not sure.
Option three, it's doing the health and safety issues, which is the air conditioning.
Okay, but what about the furniture on here and the classroom toolkit?
Those are just on there as options of where you can pull the money from. So we will specifically, so if we're gonna do the air conditioning, we need an addition 4.4 million into phase one, and we will bring back some options for how to do that. But what Yancey has listed there, that's really, the key place where you would pull that money from, is putting off some of those projects until 2021.
Is there an option to put the turf field in here as well with these two?
That's option 4.
That's not what he proposed.
It's here.
And that's an option, I'm not recommending it.
So here's, Debbie, may I?
yes.
So just to be clear, you're option 3, but you're scratching out half the slide. The funding sources for new projects you're erasing. Your option 3 is only to include the air conditioning at the top.
Those 3 things on the bottom those are going to be done. What that is listing is a possible way that we could fund it. We don't have that for now. Then there could be other ones,
If it's a
but
possible way then, and you're erasing the bottom of the slide, then I hear you asking for full approval of phase 1 projects clear through the 104 million or whatever it comes to. I would like to have a conversation about what do we want to approve now for the next years of construction, and what do we want to, I don't know if I want to approve all of phase 1, maybe some of those phase 1 projects, not just the 3 on this slide, are ones we can find some source of funds in. I'd like to leave the board some more choice. So I like your idea of moving the health and safety issues forward, but I would like to not say, and all of phase 1. I would like to say, I don't know what, but
Just to be mindful that a lot of, for me, things that are in phase one are under schematic design. And we heard from Todd about
and if it
those
was under schematic
pushback.
design, I would say, once we've started, we should start and finish.
Yeah,
So if everything else is
there.
under schematic design, that's why I wish I had a whole list of projects, because all these, I can't tell
sure, yeah,
slide decks.
yeah, we're
I wish
starting to
I
get
had
a,
spreadsheet.
okay.
So slide 8 is all of the approved projects that are not through schematic design. So this is basically, if the assumption is that if it's through schematic design and we keep forward with that, then these are the options. The status quo option already defers the final 4 of those projects to 2021, which leaves the top 4 as potential to move. And so that includes the 3 that are included in the bottom half of option 3, as well as the Novato High second turf field.
Okay. Trustee Nell?
Okay, so I have an issue with moving ahead with phase 1 that includes the Novato High second field without it being amalgamated with the rest of the fields. So I'd make a suggestion, since there seems to be a willingness to spend another $50,000 to $100,000 on maintaining the grass fields for a temporary solution for probably the 10th time since I've been on the board. And there's obviously a need for air conditioning. The dollar amounts are very similar. Why don't we postpone the Novato High second field until we can do it right and use those funds to do the air conditioning, as much air conditioning as possible. And I know we're gonna hear that we gotta put this in the middle, this little turf field in the middle of the large grass field and ignore the other fields, but we'll be locked in to this particular design and placement. Well, I understand it has a great need, but I think it's more important to do it right, and when we do it, that we do it as economically as possible. So if we can spend $50,000 on a softball field and a hardball field, I think we can come up with another $20,000 to fix the soccer field so that the students can use the grass, the center grass field for another year or two until we can work out the more intelligent way to proceed with these operationally efficient fields, which will help us in the long run to pay for our increased air conditioning costs and get us out of running the district in the red.
Yeah, Superintendent Hoagland.
So to respond to that, Trustee Nell, I think, we can bring back again different options. You can see if you agree to go ahead with the projects that are under schematic design, and that would be the first question we would ask you. Do you want to go ahead with these and continue those? Okay, that's question one. That's like status quo, whatever. This is how we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep on with these. They're in schematic design. You've already approved them. We will keep them within the budget. One comment on the Performing Arts Center at Novato High School. The way I look at that, that's an incredible amount of money, but I also look at that as a school district-wide facility. That's not just a Novato High thing. In my previous district, we had something exactly like that. It was called the Clark Center, and it was on the Arroyo Grande High School campus. Every single school, including Napomo High School, did their big productions there. Every single elementary school had their talent shows there. They rented it out for the Peking acrobats or whatever. So that's a heck of a lot of money, $25 million, but not only to support MSA, that supports our community. We do not have a 450-seat theater. So that is on the Novato High campus, but I look at that as a Novato Unified School District facility. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. But so what we would bring to you next time, Derek, is here, going ahead with these, schematic designs. And if you approve that, then we say, okay, you've approved 66 million. Now go to the next one. Or whatever it is, 80 million, those two, okay, right? So, and then, okay, now, here's what we're recommending the other projects be. And we'll tell you, so what we're gonna recommend is that we don't do the deferred maintenance, the Sinaloa Gym, the Linwood, and the San Marin High School field. We've kind of already suggested that, and then the other ones will make recommendations, and you can maybe vote on them individually. I will say with the Novato High School second turf field, we do have a 10-year plan, and we should have shown that to you, and I apologize, but the 10-year plan has that second turf field, on the left, then the softball field, then the baseball field. So it's already being thought about as eventually when we have the 10-year plan, and eventually when we do the softball field and the baseball field. So it's not where it was originally shown to you, kind of in the middle, it is on the left. So we've thought that through in terms of doing that, but that would be an individual discussion and decision you guys could make next week.
Trustee Nell.
So I think that I agree that the buckets of money, for lack of a better term, those are the ones we're committed, and I want to see us proceed on that. And I think that basically this page 8 is everything on page 8 is what we're currently discussing as optional. Now, optional, but it also, we are including extra air conditioning to be part of phase 1, which wasn't originally part of the plan. My concern, I think, is not to waste money on $2.7 million on an expensive, small turf field and I don't know, I've never voted for and approved a 10-year plan. I just got to be honest with you, Superintendent Hogaboom. I don't recall ever seeing that, or voting for it, or having it in the budget, or having to set aside capital reserves to pay for it. So I think we need to be respectful of the community when we make statements like that, that we call them what they are, is wishes, things that we would like to do. What I would like to do is have the completion of those, of the hardball field and the softball field at Novato High become part of this bond measure, and I don't see us doing that yet. So my suggestion is to set aside the 2.7 and bring it to the committee and discuss it as part of a solution going forward. But to spend some money on it now, unless you guys have schematics or you have some evidence that we're really going to be able to plug in turf hardball fields and softball fields, I mean, bring that back, I'd be happy to then proceed. But right now, you describe it as though it's a Lego thing, and to my knowledge, that does not exist.
Let's bring back the second field, the discussions we've had on that. Because we've had several about that second field. I mean, this field has been in the conversations for over a year now, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So let's bring back
Keep
that
kicking it down the
next
road.
week. And
I'm not at the next board meeting on the 13th. I'm out of town on the 13th.
no, we're at the second. This
Oh,
is
okay.
next week, the second.
Next week,
We have a
sorry.
meeting every week.
I see, it's getting crazy,
It's
huh?
our sixth board meeting.
I know, it's getting nuts.
Okay, so the schematic design, I think that's a key one. Are we all in agreement that we want to keep our schematic design project still going? I think we are, from what I've somewhat heard. You'll bring it back, but I just want to make sure that there's a little bit of,
Yeah.
okay.
There's consensus on that.
That's what I would hope at this point.
But
Yeah.
but it is not actually option one in the slide deck, because option one in the slide deck continues to include the Novato High second field.
Yeah. Okay, and then you'll bring the other, air conditioning in the field, okay.
What I'm hearing is a lot of people thinking air conditioning is a health and safety issue. I heard the superintendent say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. We're at that point now where it is. I don't think we disagree. And I don't disagree that the turf fields at Novato High need to be done. They absolutely need to be done, but it's when we do them and where it fits in our whole proposal. What we do in the meantime,
If we'd
yeah.
lost the sewer line, we wouldn't blink.
I think,
And yeah, more detail on maintaining those fields as well.
President Butler, is it?
Yes.
I'd like to, if we can get consensus from the board, but be specific in instructing staff to come back with a temporary deferred maintenance approach to the soccer field instead of the second turf field, so that we can be given some time to fix that up the same way we claim we're gonna do the ball fields. We ought to be able to do the soccer field on a temporary basis, so we can provide those programs for those.
So you want an
hundreds.
option with the second field, even though we've kind of already gotten to the point where
I
it's.
want well, I'm suggesting that the proposal is to use deferred maintenance to fix the de-gopher, fix the irrigation. We heard from our expert today that without grading it, it's a waste of time and money. So what we are talking about is a temporary solution on the hardball field, the softball field, and I'm proposing we add the soccer field.
Yeah,
So
no,
that
I
we
hear
can,
you.
so those soccer kids and lacrosse kids
Right.
can use it while we adults try to figure out how we're gonna solve this problem
Right.
permanently and finally.
Are you good?
With
And Yancy, please, if we're suggesting things that are just like completely irrational, please tell us.
possible that, yeah.
Don't let us, we understand that you guys are under a certain timing perspective.
No, there is, so the most important, when I'm hearing this, I am still moving forward with all the projects under schematic design. We have to move forward
Right.
with those. So that is the number one thing that we do need. No. The Novato High synthetic turf field, Todd, I think we could bring schematic design in 2 weeks or. Yeah, but I mean, we couldn't have it by tomorrow, which is what we would need to have it for next week. So, But I do have a little bit of concern about bringing
Okay.
things back next week. That means Thursday for me, and so I'm a little bit, well, we can talk, I can talk to, I can talk
Yeah,
to
well, I
Superintendent
think it'd be
Hogaboom.
best if we had, if you have some and not everything, I don't think this board, we tend to not get much done with this.
So that is one of my concerns, is that, it's just giving us 2 weeks to put something together. But if Superintendent Hogaboom believes we can do it, then we'll do it.
Are we at a point where we cannot do the second turf field? There's some of us who want that second turf field done, and we're
So-
so close that we're at a point where if we delay it anymore, it's gonna get pushed.
So we're under, if we don't approve it in the next, the next month, then it pushes past next summer
The second or
for
the 16th?
construction.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
Todd, please
So
add.
Debbie, I'd like to,
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, so being that this is a new fields, we don't, and you're not needing it for the start of school because you don't have it now.
Right.
We could certainly push a little farther out, and what I'm saying is it wouldn't be complete at the end of August. It might be complete at the end of September or the end of October. So that gives us a little bit longer window for you to have this discussion and decide whether to move forward. I would say probably more like into November to make your decision and still get it started. We wouldn't likely get it started as soon as school was out. We might be starting it sometime in July and finishing it, closer into the fall.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Again, your risk is the later we get into
Yeah.
the bid season, the higher the cost is gonna be,
Okay.
which is always a risk. Ideally, if we knew in October, ideally, if we had the decision in October, we're right in the window that we wanna be in. Anything beyond that, we are pushing into escalation.
So let me ask you a question. So one of the things Trustee Nell wanted to know was the alternative to doing that turf field is doing kind of what we're thinking of, what we're saying we're gonna do with the baseball, softball fields, which is keeping them in playable condition in the short term. So my question is, by next Tuesday, could you bring some pretty close estimates about what it would cost to, if we didn't do the turf field and we put it off, what would it cost to come up with a second practice field? That's what you wanted to have some more information on, right?
I'm looking to solve it temporarily before we make the mistake of building that postage stamp in the middle of that field and never get around to putting the hardball and softball field in.
So-
Title IX issue, there's a lot of factors here that haven't been discussed.
So is that possible for us to get for next week?
I certainly can. I've run some ideas and run some rough numbers on what it would take. It's not going to be cheap. We're talking, in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 a square foot, because in order to fix it, you have to fix the grade, which means you have to redo the drainage, which means that you have to redo the irrigation, and then you have to put the new surface on it. So you're talking a third the cost of a turf field.
But you could bring, but next time we could have some more.
Hold on, board members, hold on. We have,
So next time we could have a lot more specifics about the exact costs of the baseball field, the softball field, and the turf field. Can we get that? Because that's, I think, what the board needs to consider to go through with some other things.
I understand. I just want to make clear that I'm not on the same page, that there's a kind of a stopgap solution to it, because I think the problems are more fundamental than that. Your topography is off. At the baseball and softball fields, you've continued to add fill over the years, basically, and created a mountain out there that your drainage doesn't work and your irrigation doesn't work. So, once that's happened, and the first step that you have to do is to take everything back to the design grades. And when you do that, you're getting into the drainage and the irrigation. So it's not going to be a low-cost solution. It's going to be a fairly high-dollar solution.
So I'm confused. Are we saying that the softball field and the hardball field temporary solutions are
non-existent.
not a good idea?
Not a good idea. That's what
either?
I'm hearing.
So I don't know, maybe I'm confused, but, so we're basically not gonna be doing anything about serious problems at one of our facilities. Well, It's one or the other. I mean, there's pictures of sod and gopher control, and we're telling the community that we're going to do temporary solution for the softball field and the hardball field, but now we're hearing that it's a lot of work, it's expensive, and it's maybe not viable.
We'll bring those costs to you next time. You can decide.
I would ask though, for the second field, bring an option that doesn't involve regrading. That thing was graded that way for 50 years, and it was the soccer field. Live with it, just smooth it out, and basically get grass on it, and make it so it can be cut, and that's it, for now.
And I
Short term.
guess, and I apologize, but I'm getting kind of mixed messages
Yeah.
when we're talking about not putting carpet over a bad situation, and yet we're talking about not regrading. I mean, it's,
No, we gotta do.
Pardon me.
Okay,
I think you missed the part of the conversation. These are temporary one-year solutions just to keep the grass going and maybe kill some gophers along the way. Yeah, and, with traps or, I don't know, something exciting. But the solution is temporary. And so we're looking for a temporary cost, not a get it graded, get it fixed, put grass on it,
so top dress, overseed, repair the irrigation, and nurse
Stop.
it along for
Yeah.
another year.
Yeah, and then know that we're gonna tear it all out a year later and do it right, whatever right is.
Understood.
You were hearing for all three. What you were hearing made no sense.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly top dress, overseed, do some gopher control and nurse these things along. I don't know that I would refer to that as mitigation. I think, it's a stopgap. Yeah.
Well, it's
we're holding it hostage is
it's
the way
the
I'm
sa-
seeing it.
It's the same proposal for the hardball field and the softball field. That's what we're
It's
talking about, a
unacceptable.
temporary solution.
Well, it's unacceptable to hold something hostage. I'm not gonna go into it, but it's just, for me, it's unacceptable. You're holding up this field so that you guys can get the turf done at the baseball field and the turf at the softball field, so you're holding this back and noth's gonna get done. So,
You know,
that's where we are.
that's, President
That's just
Butler,
my
that is-
personal,
that is your opinion.
yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah, so
But I
don't
really-
agree with me.
I don't think that anyone here is holding hostage. We are talking about a common sense solution to solve a problem in the most efficient and economical way possible. Right now, the proposal is to do some of it, but not all of it. I'm proposing we don't do any of it until we come up with a solution for all of it.
Okay.
That's not holding hostage, that's trying to do the right
Well,
thing.
just I'm talking about from past board meetings and the thoughts that I've heard, so let's not banter back and forth, it's fine. All right. So I think we're good? You guys are okay? Yeah, as good as you can be. All right, thank you so much. This meeting's adjourned.